The last thing I saw him doing was he was part of the riots stealing TVs.
That's Jake Paul.
Whatever. Both Pauls suck.
They're the same person.
There's
can't
too
change
many
my
of them.
Yeah.
Too many
It's
of
one
them.
big Jake conspiracy, or it's one big Paul conspiracy.
Is that what that is?
They're the same.
That's why the Earth is flat.
Oh my god.
The Pauls
You
are the
know-
ones controlling everything.
Yeah, instead of just naming this whatever you were gonna name this episode, just name it the Paul Flat Earth Conspiracy.
This is our podcast now, Dean. You aren't in control anymore.
I never am.
The Paul Earth question.
They're an important part of people's breakfast.
Here's the thing about sex in fiction. You don't need to have a fucking sex scene.
I can't stand those books. They make me so mad.
I can't replace a fire alarm on my own.
Say your morning routine.
Lemonade across my bed.
An unexpected pregnancy. Now David's just... It's like, who's your mommy?
Hello, everybody. My name is Dean, and welcome back to the InkGuild Podcast. Tonight, I'm joined by Gabe.
Hey.
And we've got the Soibois returning for another video game episode. So, Morgan,
Howdy. Thanks for having us again, Dean.
thank you. Everest.
Hello.
And we've got Michael.
Magustulations, everybody.
Yeah. So, Michael, are you part of the Soibois, dude? Or are you just...
I am.
Yeah? All right. So, Michael is
He
part
was
of...
in 3 episodes.
Okay,
Three
cool.
episodes,
So,
but he's mainly our channel artist.
yeah.
I'm a
So,
foundation member.
yeah. So, yeah. If you check out the Soibois channel, they've got some amazing art done by Michael. And also, just as a quick thing on him, he's been like a very huge help in helping my book, because he's designed 3 different cover arts, one of which I paid for. The other 2 were completely thanks to him, and I really don't deserve it, but thank you so much, dude.
Thank you.
Yeah, but and you know, everyone here is familiar with Morgan and Everest because they were part of they were part of our first season where we talked about video game store. Or no, they were. Yeah, it was in season 1 where we talked video game stories again, but this time we're going to be we're going to be following up on that with a very interesting topic relating to video game stories, and that is non-linear storytelling in video games. I'll be explaining that quickly, but before we get to the explanation, actually, I wanted to do a check-in. So for our podcast, a check-in is basically what we've been working on lately, but because we're talking about video games, let's talk about what we've been playing recently. So I'll go first. I've been playing a lot of Skyrim again on my PC. And it's been fun. Like, it's like I lately I've been remembering just why it is my second favorite video game of all time, but I'm also remembering why it's the bane of everyone's existence at this point, because playing a 2011 game in 2021, you really do take notice of a lot of things. And it's only really because of nostalgia that is keeping me from not bashing my head in every time the game bugs out. But yeah, Gabe, what have you been playing recently?
God, I've been going through a lot recently. I've been playing a couple of like RPG Maker games. I recently got this game called Off, which I'm not really sure about it so far, but it
Off
seems
is phenomenal. It's
I've heard good things. I got Yume Nikki. I'm gonna get Hylix, and I got Omori. So I'm going through those, and I've been replaying the Mass Effect trilogy amidst that.
Nice. Morgan, what have you been playing recently?
So it's a mix of like hipster BS and like normie BS, because I played.
That doesn't surprise me.
Recently, I've been playing a lot of Omori. Nearly finished the game, and I played another RPG Maker game that maybe inspired it, maybe was mentioned earlier, that I will be talking about later on this podcast. But then I've also been playing shit like I don't know, like 20 hours, like 2K, and Valorant, because I hate myself.
All right, Michael, what have you been playing?
I just like to say, I feel like if you take some like hipster BS and some normie BS and you put it in like a cryo tank, you'll get Morgan in a few years. Just a Morgan cocktail. I haven't played too much since about December because I've had a lot of big like drawing clients in the last few months. But for like really big ones of note, I binged all of Death Stranding in January.
Nice.
I played my secret not going to talk about it games over the last 2 weeks, but they're short ones, so it's nice. I played through all of Splatoon's story mode on one night. That was a lot of fun. That was way more fun than I thought.
Awesome.
It's so colorful. It's so vibrant. It really takes like the very limited amount of mechanics and spreads them out as thinly but as like solidly as it can. And then I've been piecemeal trying to complete the F-Zero story for the last 10 months.
Let's go.
Like the F-Zero GX game is the hardest game there will ever be. I will play it maybe like a week at a time, and I'll get through one of the 9 story mode levels on normal. It is absurd. You are playing about 3 video games at the same time, and the story itself isn't even the big race yet. I'm still just like Captain Falcon's at the bar and he puts on a VR set and he wants to play, or he's practicing, or he's driving down the street and some rando races him. And these are like the hardest races I've ever seen in my life.
That's wild, man. All right. Everest, how about you to close off the check-in? What have you been playing?
In terms of playing, I mean, I've been playing Hades practically nonstop since like September. Awesome game. Really, really like it. Probably my favorite game of last year. Along with that, I decided to take it upon myself in January to start playing through an entire trilogy of games that I'd like to talk about later in the podcast.
Ooh.
And finally, I mean, I've been playing a lot of Among Us with my little cousins because it's their favorite game right now, and they love hanging out with us, me and my brothers, so we've been playing with them a lot. And I've been emulating a lot of old games and playing them over again. I recently played through all of Gitaru Man, which I am absolutely in love with. Probably my favorite like rhythm game ever. And yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, that was the check-in. For our audience, there's always check-ins in every odd numbered episode. So if you're interested in keeping up with us, you can always follow that. But let's get to the main topic of tonight, and that is non-linear storytelling in video games. Oh my god, thank god for fucking editing. But anyway, it's fun naming these topics because first of all, no one ever really figures this out until I put it out there. But basically, what non-linear storytelling in video games is about is kind of exploring, I guess, like what video games has given us in terms of storytelling. So a lot of people are familiar with, you know, the simple get from point A to point B hero's journey story where it's following a singular character, typically of their journey towards, you know, saving the world or whatever. And it's a very familiar thing across movies, TV shows, even books. But video games, especially lately, have offered us plenty of opportunity to not just explore one character's journey, but multiple journeys across huge open sandboxes. Meaning, basically, you can make your own story as you play the game, right? That's not to take away from any current protagonists out there with interesting stories, but video games nowadays have so much potential for storytelling that it can be hard to just focus on a single story. What non-linear storytelling does then is gives players the chance to explore as many of these as possible. And tonight we're going to be breaking it down into three specific areas: world building, characters, and the story itself. So as I continue explaining, when we're talking about the world building, we're going to be exploring some of our favorite sandboxes and open worlds in video games. For characters, we're going to be exploring those characters, or we're going to be exploring characters in video games that maybe have the central narrative focused around them, or maybe don't have the central narrative focused around them, but ultimately they have a lot of depth and they have a lot of lore that is worth sharing. And finally, we're going to be going over some of our favorite individual non-linear games. So, games with branching decisions, games with multiple endings, just so long as it doesn't end from point A to point B. This time you have, if you were to go from point A to point B, it'll lead you down to road F, basically. I know that's kind of a dumb way of explaining it, but yeah. How's that sound, guys? Did I explain it well? I need validation.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds like there's a lot of potential in this conversation.
Yeah. So because there are 5 of us, even though it shows 6 it'll be showing 6 on the screen, it can be hard, or we'll be talking about a lot. So keep that in mind, everybody. But as we're going to be starting with world building, I will start. Then Gabe will be speaking next. Then Morgan. Then Michael. Then Everest. And then we'll repeat the cycle. We'll see after the first cycle of world building games if we're gonna be talking about another set of worlds, or if we're gonna go into characters, because with five gamers, we each have our own favorites. So yeah, with all of that out of the way, let's first get into my pick, which was something that Everest talked about last time when we did this. I have enjoyed the fuck out of Outer Worlds' solar system in terms of world building. Yeah. I have loved every single part of it, even though I haven't finished the game yet. When I was Everest, when you first told me that, of just how vast and open Outer Wilds' solar system was, I was interested then. When Gabe played the game and he said that it was one of his favorites almost immediately, I really needed to pick it up. And then when I finally picked up Outer Wilds and experienced that solar system for myself, that first launch into space and having the entire, how many planets to go around in was amazing. I love the fact that each planet has their own stories on top of, I guess, the main overarching narrative of trying to find out what happened, right? Because obviously in Outer Wilds there is a time loop that you're stuck in. Some of my favorites is what I think Dark Bramble is the one planet that I think I've been stuck on for like how long, but it's terrifying. It's so eerie and scary, but Jesus, it does it get me every time. There's just something so fascinating about what I can't see that just makes Dark Bramble so fascinating, because you're only really guided by lights. It is so cool from a world building perspective. On top of that, what was the name of that one planet that had that its moon was destroying it basically?
Brittle Hollow.
Brittle Hollow.
Brittle Hollow. I love that. I love the fact that every few minutes the planet just continuously keeps coming apart and you get to see inside of it, and it's gorgeous in there. There's so many different colors, and the black hole at the center of it is terrifying. That is really fucking scary. Aside from that, the Ash Twins has a lot of history and a lot of storytelling in each planet, or on each of the twins, and having it so close to the sun means there's a lot of danger. And I guess obviously the home planet has a lot of characters to it. There's a lot of charm, and it's where you start everything. The reason why I wanted to talk about Outer Wilds as my first choice for non-linear world building is because on top of the central narrative that you have, there are so many individual stories that you come across without ever needing to be told it. As you're piecing together what happened, you encounter thing. You encounter fellow astronauts that don't just fill you in on clues, but they tell you about themselves. They give you insight into everything that's going on from their perspective, and that helps like open up the world a lot more. But on top of that, like staying on an individual planet and observing how all of it works is absolutely incredible. And I think only a few games have really kind of replicated that, like that sense of like a living, breathing sandbox. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. No, Outer Wilds blew my mind when I first played it.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear what you guys think. And actually before then, do you guys kind of understand how this will work now?
Oh, yeah. Getting it.
Yeah, so at least for the world building aspect, do you guys kind of understand that, like, talk about that, like, there's multiple stories within said world or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I've got a great big list of mine.
All right. I just wanted to make sure I just wanted to make sure, because it was because of Outer Wilds that I wanted to do this discussion in the first place. And on Outer Wilds, let's talk about it.
Yeah. I'm glad that you like the game. I'm glad that you took my recommendation. That game is amazing, and another one of my favorite games that I played last year. And I kind of agree with you that I really like that, like, the game doesn't necessarily spell everything out for you, and you kind of just need to like look for context clues. And another thing that I think I mentioned in the last episode as well is that, like, there's a lot of messages you find that are left behind by this like alien race that you're kind of trying to track down throughout the game, and you realize that these messages always have names before them, and all of these like names like recur around the entire solar system, and you can find them all over the place. And if you actually take like the messages that they left behind, you can kind of like create a character in your mind of each alien, and you can actually follow their pathway through the universe until their death, which is, I think, is really, really awesome and something really cool about Outer Wilds. And I know that, like, I tried tracking a couple of the aliens and kind of like figuring out where they were at what time, and I just had a lot of fun doing that.
That's awesome. Oh my god, I don't think I realized that. I've just been dying too many times by the fucking anglerfish.
That's fair.
I know virtually nothing with Outer Wilds. Like, I'm actually watching a review right now to try and catch up and remind myself, because I watched a bunch of stuff on it before, but I never heard about that type of stuff. One I could relate to, which you guys might know about, is if anyone here has watched Venture Brothers. Venture Brothers starts off as like this really like bottom of the barrel, like really goofy, dumb kids, or like immature, dirty humor show. But then as the series goes on, you will get like random inklings of a character in this world, and you'll be able to piece together who that person is. And then they would have been mentioned in season 1, a few tidbits in season 1 and 2 and 3, and then in season 4 they are a fully realized person who has a lot of like presence in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But giving that like reverse breadcrumb trail of the character is really nice.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Gabe, you've been you were the one who, like, I guess helped me convince to play it. What are your thoughts on that?
I got this game back in September, and I like absolutely fell in love with it. I was just elated with like how the game was, and like I've been so burnt out by like very linear game design, and like even to the point where like even Rockstar, who's like the herald of open world games, has now just become like go here, do this in this specific order, game over, you didn't do it in the way we wanted. And I'm very burnt out by that. So like playing a game where there's no mission markers, there's no one telling you what to do, there's no little voice in your ear sparking orders at you, you basically just have to make an objective for yourself and like put it on yourself to like seek out shit. I was just like it was like a breath of fucking fresh air. I think, God, there's so much shit like that. I can't pinpoint like an exact moment I fell in love with, but like as far as the storytelling goes, definitely like the little journals and stuff from the Nomai, like that was a highlight of the game for me. Mm-hmm. I won't give details because like not everyone in this recording has played it, and of course not everyone listening will have played it, but like when I like explored the ruins of the Interloper and like
Yeah.
found the stuff in the center of it, I was like, I just put down my controller and just let myself die. I was so fucking depressed.
Yeah, that is probably one of the coolest moments of the game.
Yeah, that was like, yeah. I don't want to gush about game design, even though I love game design, but like that's just the storytelling alone was like, it's like perfection. Just these little stories just threading along, and it's great.
Yeah. I think the moment that like hooked it for me was probably that first launch into space. Like finally like being able to explore the solar system. That was when it was like, oh fuck, okay, Everest was right again. Because you weren't wrong when you recommended What Remains of Edith Finch, dude. You weren't, and you absolutely were not wrong about fucking Outer Wilds.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So if you got any more game recommendations for everybody, you can save that for the end.
Sure.
I'm kind of surprised Everest was the first in that chain. Edith Finch seems such like, for Dean, it seems such like a game that you would be the forerunner on.
You would think, right? But I guess it just kind of escaped my radar until Everest was telling me about it. Or actually, no, he gifted it to me and he said, "Hey, I think you would really, really like this game," and I fucking loved it.
Yeah.
But,
that game's also really good.
Yeah. But I guess let's move on now to Gabe's first. Or I guess to Gabe's pick.
Yeah, so, okay, I didn't bring this up when we were talking about games we're playing recently earlier, because I wanted to save this, but I've been playing the fuck out of this game called Kentucky Route Zero recently.
Ooh.
Which I have found so far. I haven't finished it yet, so, like, I don't want to... It's not really a game where I think spoilers matter, but, like, I haven't... So far, my experience with it is very, like, it's very similar, sort of in terms of, like, the design of how the story is structured to Outer Wilds. So for those who haven't played Kentucky Route Zero, basically, you play as a delivery driver for an antique shop who's trying to find this weird ghost tunnel called like the Route Zero, or just the Zero. And basically, there's no way to describe the game that's not going to make me sound pretentious. So, pretentiary warning. The way the game is sort of formatted is sort of like an art exhibit. It's very like floaty, and like you go through sections. It's sort of like a point and click adventure, but like not really. Like you'll sort of go through an area, and a character will have like a very, very long dialogue section, but it's not dialogue that's actually pertinent to the plot. It's mostly just these. It's sort of like world building, except the world that's being built is just middle of nowhere rural Kentucky. And instead of like space aliens or like dungeons, the lore that you're exploring is dying small businesses. And it's basically just like going around Kentucky and going through like ghost tunnels and like talking to people and sort of finding out these little small stories, and like in a dying country. It's very surreal. It's very dark, but like not in a grim way. It's just sort of upsetting. And I don't really know what else to say about it. It's just a very weird and very interestingly structured game. And I haven't finished it yet because the way that it's designed doesn't really lend itself to like oh, I gotta keep playing this. But like it's just a very fascinating game to play, even though it basically doesn't have a story of any kind, and the gameplay is like barely there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've okay, this is like a comparison that's gonna go over most heads, but like I've heard it's like the Ulysses of video games, where it's just a whole lot of nothing, but it's like the most beautiful nothing conceivable.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know much about the game, but it's been on my to play list for a really long time.
Yeah, I've stared at it from a distance. No, I've not played it.
Why do you have to say it like that?
Could I
You're
ask
looking at it from the bushes.
Yeah.
God, Morgan.
Stalking my prey. My to play prey.
Just looking at it with his big playing binoculars.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
But if I could ask a question, Gabe,
Yeah.
whether this be like potential spoiler for the main game or just for a side story, does it actually go in any direction that is not like tangential or real? So like, are there ever aliens, robots, time travel, like parallel dimensions, quantum physics? Does it ever actually reach above like a normal human drama, or does it always stay as just real?
By the end of Act 1, yeah, it gets very surreal and very into like the fantastical by the end of Act 1. But I forgot to get into this. This is like something I love about the game. There's a lot of supernatural shit going on in the game.
Okay. I honestly have never seen a single thing from it aside from like the basic half an hour. And when I was thinking of it being compared to Ulysses, I honestly thought is this just like a super long like character drama of a video game. But it does have other elements.
What's interesting is that it does have those other elements, but it is kind of like it's like a 5-hour character drama in the form of a video game, because like there are these supernatural elements. Like there is actually a ghost tunnel that's like sort of in a parallel dimension, and there are I haven't gotten past Act 2 yet, but like so far there's like giant monsters, there's like parallel dimensions, there's a whole bunch of crazy shit going on.
It's like it's the Evangelion of video games.
It's all done in like again, it's like sort of that floaty way. Like none of it's ever really drawn attention to, and like some shit will happen where like characters will be inside a museum, and the museum will have rain flowing through it, and there will be just people who live in the museum, and there's no occupants in the museum. And then a giant bird will come and pick you up, and instead of driving on the highway like you normally do, you're now flying across the highway on a giant bird.
It really is like an art exhibit, huh?
Oh
and then it's never drawn attention to again, and like that's never explained, and like no one is like agog at it. Like it's just people in the game are just like, yeah, this is just how shit is here. There are ghosts, there are parallel dimensions, there are giant birds.
Oh, sorry. How close would you compare it to Night in the Woods? It's giving me a lot of vibes like that.
That is a tough comparison. I'd say Night in the Woods is a lot more direct in terms of like its characters and like its dialogue. Like Night in the Woods gets to the point a lot quicker, and like that, I don't think that's a knock against either. I would say they're different games, sort of how they're structured, but like the vibes are very similar, I'll say.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like Night in the Woods feels like a poppy, punky, like graphic novel from the 2000s, and then like Kentucky Route Zero always gives me this feel of like, honestly, almost like a Stephen King novel, kind of like House of Leaves or like Ulysses, where it's just like a big story about nothing, but it's really good nothing.
Yeah, I would say the best comparison I've heard is that like I know a lot of people said Control was like if David Lynch did a video game, but I will die on the hill that like Kentucky Route Zero is like what you would probably get if David Lynch ever made a video game.
All I gotta say is, when you guys describe it as a game about nothing, I'm just thinking of a game adaptation of Seinfeld now.
Why is that what you think about, Morgan?
Because it's a show about nothing. Imagine a game about nothing. That's what
it's a show about nothing.
Oh my god!
Picture Morgan in the diner just screaming it.
I gotta get on the Route Zero, Jerry. I gotta get on the Route Zero. I gotta get on the Route Zero.
Where is this Kentucky Route Zero? It starts at Kentucky Route 1.
What's the deal with the zero?
Numbers start at 1.
Oh my fucking god, we haven't even gotten to Morgan yet and he's already hijacked the show.
Now I really want to play Kentucky Route Zero.
Yeah, I do too.
It's really good.
Actually, you know what? I'm gonna need to wait some time because I have fucking Kentucky Route Zero as Seinfeld stuck in my head. Thanks, Morgan. I need some time to like get that out of my head before I play.
You're welcome. Just imagine. Oh,
you want to go, Morgan?
I just wanted to say, just imagine a art house film game, but it's like narrated or it stars Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh my god, that's gonna. Do you just not want me to play this game, Morgan?
What's great is that the game doesn't have voice acting, so there's nothing stopping me from.
Oh my god!
It's just black and white, and then it cuts to a black screen that says, "What's the deal with?"
Okay,
And it
look,
trails
all
off.
right, no, we're moving on. We can entertain this tangent later.
To turn it back to the podcast just really quick, just because I don't want to forget it. Dean, if there could be a request in the future, if we could do one about either video games or stories in general, just about nothing. Like, how do you take a story about nothing? Because I don't want to tangentialize, but I want to talk about adaptation with Nicolas Cage now, just
Oh
like
my
every other
God.
type of story about nothing.
You guys are
But,
giving me a wealth of ideas here. I'd love to think we should plan another episode after this. But anyway,
Or a
Morgan.
braincast episode.
Yeah.
Braincast episode.
Okay, so have you guys heard of a classic known as Beyond Two Souls? No, I'm
What
just
a
fucking. I'm just pulling your
I
shit.
swear to God.
No, but for real, I'm gonna be
about to
talking.
He stole my game.
I was gonna talk about a game about nothing. Yume Nikki, or in English, Dream Diary. It's very well known because it is, I believe, 5 or 6 months before Cave Story. It's one of the bigger RPG maker horror-ish games created by a man called Kikiyama. And I believe Yume Nikki, you can honestly fit with the first and second subject of like world building and like just characters in general, because a lot of the world is built through the dreams of the main character Madatsuki. And just, there's a lot of small hints of what's going on in her life because, and I just want to preference this. The reason why I called it a game about nothing is because the creator of the game, Kikiyama, he has gone out of his way to say it's a game about nothing. But if Ridley Scott has taught me anything, it's a creator of media does not matter. I don't care what they say. Deckard's not a replicant. But anyways,
Jesus Christ.
speaking of the world, there's just a lot of good.
What a jab.
Yeah, I don't
Sorry,
like Ridley Scott.
Oh my God. Okay, Morgan, get back. Continue talking about your
so
thing.
anyways, it's a game about exploring Madatsuki's dreams. You go through many different doors that lead to different worlds, and these worlds all drop little tiny hints, whether it be the theme of isolation or violence. You just have a lot of these characters that just give slight clues, and like, because I don't want to spoil all of them because there's some that I find to be really good. But there's it's probably one of the most like, and I guess little trigger warning here, because we will be delving into a sensitive topic here. There is a very famous scare named Euboa, which happens in a 1 in 64 chance. So, if you want to find it yourself, it's going to be painful. But a lot of the implications there is that, it's kind of like a distorted face, kind of looks close to like maybe like a Gygus, and as some people know, Gygus kind of resembles that of an aborted fetus, or just like a fetus in general. And Uboa is kind of the same way. And once you interact with Uboa, you get transported into the White Desert, but more particular, a section called Uboa's Trap, where there's this very ominous-looking figure that is groping at these breast-like hills. And the only way you can get out of said area is by waking yourself up. And, that helps. Like, I don't want to, like, spell it out, like, what it is, because I don't want to say that word in a conversation like this with a bunch of people. But, yeah, it kind of leads to, like, kind of not so consensual topics and how people fear that. And, yeah, that's just why I love Yume Nikki for that type of ordeal, is because it's just a lot of tiny hints.
Yeah,
and you can interpret it in any way you want, because creator said no, it doesn't mean anything, but you know what, it means something to me, damn it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, while Morgan's been playing this game, he's been streaming it to me, because we sometimes do that where we'll just like hang out in a server and like stream games to each other, and I've been watching him play it. And yeah, it's really interesting how Yume Nikki, like, yeah, it really is a story about nothing, because there's not really like an inherent goal to what you're doing. And a lot of the gameplay pretty much just revolves around like wandering these bizarre rooms that are all appearing in this girl's dream. And yeah, like you just kind of stumble upon these random things, and it's just kind of up to the player to kind of come to their own conclusions about it. And some of the stuff's really weird, but it's really cool also in that sense that like it's about nothing, but it's also like there's so much you can glean from it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to glean from it. And I did forget to mention, I guess there is technically an end game of collect, because there's these things called effects in every world and like deeper in those worlds.
Right.
Where, yeah, they're called effects, where they have, most of them do not have a purpose. They're more like cosmetic. There are some where it's like a bike that lets you move faster, or a knife that lets you stab people if you're feeling a little sadistic. But yeah, for the most part, a lot of it kind of reflects more of the character. Like one of the effects is just having blonde hair. And in Japanese culture, having more like Western appearances is kind of like the I guess the goal of beauty there.
Right.
And so it kind of shows like how Matatsuki thinks and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I
Nice.
don't know. I don't want to like spoil everything. Just play it. I'm only like, I played 5 hours of it. I'm basically done.
Yeah.
It's not a long game. Please play it.
Please.
Yeah. Well, I mean with like you had said, like a big part of this story, or a big part of the world, takes place within a girl's dream, and dreams have always been like a creative like haven, I think, because every dream is unique for every person, right? You can get similar images, but basically it's however it goes.
Oh yeah.
I guess. Like
there's
dreams
a
are
reason. Oh, sorry. What was that, dude?
No, it's just a thing. It's just a small thing, but like, yeah, dreams are huge opportunities for, I guess like non-linear storytelling in general. Like, you can, with dreams, it goes so all over the place sometimes, right?
Yeah, and I guess just to add on to the point of like how dreams are so expansive, there's a reason why the Yume Nikki wiki, there's a reason why they stopped adding fan games, like entries for fan games, because it's gone to the point where it's in like the triple digits. It's nutty how much you can get with a dream. And also, like I was saying earlier, Omori is also inspired heavily by Yume Nikki.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone who's played that game, you'll enjoy Yume Nikki 100%.
Cool.
Sweet.
I guess then, if no one else wants to add on to that, we can move on to Michael's world.
Oh, wait, one more thing. Just imagine Seinfeld, but it was
Shut up.
it was like Twin Peaks.
Why
It's Yume Nikki.
is Seinfeld gonna be the meme in this episode?
I love how Yume Nikki looks nothing like neither of those, and from anything I've ever seen of it, does not like follow those paths at all.
Morgan,
but I can
what are
still
you
see where
doing?
you're coming from.
What's up, D?
What are you doing?
What am I doing?
No,
I'm
Morgan,
being
why are you still bringing up Seinfeld?
Funny joke. It's a throwback.
Oh my god. Okay. All right. Well,
I just wanted to check because like I've been trying to refresh myself because I didn't remember too much with Outer Worlds, and I was not remembering too much with Yume Nikki. So just checking because I was watching videos around it. The original Yume Nikki that I knew was the 2D pixel art one.
Yes.
They then remade it for Steam in a 3D engine, right?
Yeah, okay. I'm going to say that
okay.
right now. I'm going to say that right now. Please avoid that game.
The 2D one's the good one.
The 2D one's the good one. The 3D one, like, there's definite passion in it. But it feels like it was made by college students in, like, a game jam. The game is oh, yeah, I'm sorry. The game is heavily linear. It doesn't have a lot of that aspects of exploration. A lot of the unique aspects and storytelling clues are no longer there.
Yeah, like the only things I was gonna say that I saw in the 3D version that I liked was, I've been seeing a lot recently with really cool skyboxes, like along with Death Stranding. Just there's cool stuff in it with the skyboxes. I love when they use parallax of a skybox to make a character look either super large or to give the feel of like psychedelics or dreamlike state where something's very off in the distance and it's warped.
No.
Nothing else looks good in it though.
No, that's like the only good part. Like that is the pink sea area. That's it.
Mhm.
Everything else is garbage. Play the original Yume Nikki. It's free on Steam. And yeah, that's really it.
All right, cool.
So
I don't really have much to contribute about Yume Nikki, but I literally downloaded it earlier today, so it's a crazy coincidence.
Heck yeah, I was actually really scared. I was like, okay, I'm gonna play this one game for the podcast. I swear to God, if one of these guys brings it up before me, I'm going to rage.
Oh boy.
It's funny too because he told me about that, and I was like, "There's no way anyone else is gonna bring up Yume Nikki. Nobody's talked about that game. It's fine. You're totally fine." And then Gabe brought it up. I was like, "Oh."
What a coincidence.
So Morgan has stolen both of mine. My initial one was going to be Beyond Two Souls, and then my backup was going to be Yume Nikki. So I will do the one I was actually going to do, which is Control, baby. Control and Alan Wake as like a 1-2 type of punch thing. Because honestly, the stuff I have to say for one kind of flows into the other. I'll admit they both do follow a very like structural path. If you're in the mood for just getting right to the end of the story, you can complete Alan Wake in like 4 hours. You can complete Control in like 10. They both have a very strict line, but it's a real testament to how Remedy can make a game where you could wade through the entirety of the game and every direction you go in feels just as solid and valid as that main storyline.
Right.
To the point where you can have these the main storyline, like I'll keep with Control, but the main storyline in Control is so incredibly disjointed and weak that it feels like you went off and just did side stories. In the DLC, there's this giant monster and the whole thing is set about a giant monster in an area and you got to get the monster out. And halfway through it, there's literally just a story where there's like an alien locked in a room and you got to go find his head that's hidden in a desk somewhere. It doesn't have anything to do with the others, but because of the state that Control puts you in, this very like dreamlike state for the whole game, it incentivizes you to play through a super weird disjointed story or go to these side missions. So it is a linear game, quote unquote, in an open world, but it puts you in such a great state to do whatever you want. I'm kind of rambling, but what I'm saying is Control's weird, it's dreamlike, and it puts you in a mindset to do the side missions as much as the main story. It's really... Oh.
No, go ahead. I'll ask my question in a second.
Alan Wake does something very similar, where there's a very clear story about a writer who's going through this very like Jacob's Ladder setup where he doesn't know what's happening and what's not happening and people are missing and people are dying. But it gives just as much credit to this 100% finished. Like you can watch the whole show from beginning to end online I think it's called the Nightmare Zone. And it's like it's a really bad Twilight Zone. And you can just sit your character down and then just like put your controller on the table and watch this show with Alan Wake.
Nice. All right. So my question was, since we were talking about world building, I'm not too familiar with Control, even though I have the game, and I'm even less familiar with Alan Wake. So because you're familiar with it, Michael, what are some of the mini, what are some of the little stories or side missions that you can encounter within these games, if there are any that like really stuck out to you?
There are oodles upon oodles. Like I could definitely rant and rave and make a Control Alan Wake podcast, but I would say the simplicity in all of them is so nice. I think I could list off every story in Control right now. It would take 15 minutes, but you would understand every single one. The main setup for Alan Wake, like I said, it's a writer. He's going through this Jacob's Ladder setup where he doesn't know what's real and what's not in this little small town. And then with Control, it's even simpler, where it's a lady named Jessie going in to... I should have explained what Control was, huh? So my game Control is about this lady named Jessie Faden. Jessie Faden goes into this building called the Oldest Building, and it's this random building based on the AT&T windowless building in New York. It's very scary. It looks like a Star Destroyer of a building. And it's just this innocuous building nobody thinks about. And she goes in to be a janitor's assistant. And she walks into the boss's office to clean it up. And the boss is dead. And she's the new CEO of the company. And that's it. Like, that's what happens in the first 3 minutes. And you're the boss and you got to go clean up the building. It's very similar to the X-Files with the way the building works, where it's this government group called the Federal Bureau of Control. And the Federal Bureau deals with these like mysterious magic objects that can like appear in our world from the other side. And they give people superpowers and they can like bring demons over to the other side. Very like Stephen King's Stranger Things style, like magic item.
Right.
And so all the stories you get in this game are just you walking around doing your job, or you reading files for your job. But the thing is that these are such like absurd concepts done in the form of like really boring office work that they all become like incredibly intriguing. Like, I think it's the third piece of paper you pick up is this one that's mostly blacked out because it's classified information, but it talks about how like the building itself is a living creature and it will shift its rooms sometimes. And so there was a boardroom meeting going on, and then the boardroom just filled with water and there was a shark in it. And that's just the level of absurd you get the whole game, but you're just reading it as a little like a little pamphlet you find on the ground in the office building. It's just like, please take note of when the rooms are shifting for your own safety and the safety of your fellow coworker.
Right. Nice. Well, it's thing, like, you know, as has been the theme of world building, like it's always fascinating how much developers would pack into a story, right? Like for us to kind of find out either as the story progresses or on our own time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like both Alan Wake and Control, I find with the world building, lay it out so cleanly and matter-of-factly, but we'll let it go off the rails, and that is what draws the person in. Like, the story's not really the point of these games. The point of these games is just a really absurd side story to the main story.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a nice balance to have, like a very clean-cut, very simple main story, and then all these other side ones that stack up on its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Sometimes, I guess on a kind of off example, or I guess in a somewhat related example, Skyrim has a very weak main story, but you have all of the individual guild quests, or the guild stories, such as the College of Winterhold, the Companions, the Dark Brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, you know, they in themselves are main story quests, but that's only really within their own kind of subject. Like the main Dragonborn story is pretty weak, but it's everything that you can do around Skyrim that makes it fascinating. You interact with whole new sets of characters and discover your own little secrets as you progress in these stories. That's what makes it, I think, a very like big living, breathing world, really.
Now that you bring it up with Skyrim, I don't know if I would compare it to Skyrim exactly. I would compare it more to, these are probably much easier comparisons for everyone listening who doesn't know Control, but it's much more easily comparable to BioShock.
Right.
Because not everything in Skyrim affects the world in a significant way, but everything in BioShock affects the city.
Right.
Another one, which is like a big influence that Control wears on its sleeve, is the SCP Foundation. Because I think I counted 5 different like magic objects in Control that are just SCPs.
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
That's
if
cool.
Everyone knows like the famous, I think it's SCP-139, which is that big like baby doll that stands in the corner of the room, and if you look away from it,
oh really?
they have that in control. And there's like a I'm using the word magic, but they have a bunch of like business terms and lingo for it in the game. But like in the magic items, there's a magic prison they keep them all in at the bottom of the building. And there's this guy you find. So the whole building's kind of going to heck. Monsters are breaking out, prisoners running the asylum. And there's this guy who is on shift, and he's supposed to have gotten off 16 hours ago. But he's looking at the item because if he doesn't stop looking at it, it'll kill him. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's the SCP / like Weeping Angel, but it's just a fridge. And he's scared to death of this fridge, and his eyes are like tearing up. And later on, you can go and help him. And right before you get into the room, he's like, I don't think I can hold it anymore. You just hear him scream. You just hear a fridge smash into the wall. And you go in there, and the guy's just gone. And it's implied the fridge ate him.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
That's awesome.
Just a quick question. Please tell me the SCP-294, aka the coffee machine, is in control.
I know what the coffee machine is. I feel like I could give like a comparable one to it. I don't have so they're called objective powers, and I don't have every object like in my head at the moment. The most would be probably the main character's weapon. So like when Jessie goes in, she finds the CEO dead, and there's this gun in his hand, and it looks like a Cybertruck version of a gun. Like it's this very like obnoxious, blocky, monolithic looking gun, and it like breathes ever so slightly. The blocks like lift up and down, and it's actually like a telephone you can use to call the astral plane and like talk with like monsters and stuff. And so you're gonna like this because this is very much like something from a Persona game. She puts a gun up to her head and she can talk with them. So the gun itself has various uses to it. Like the thing that I think compares it the most to the coffee machine is it's called the Excalibur, and it's a item that correlates to a person's like general notion of self-defense. So like in the past, it wouldn't be a gun, it would be a sword, or it would be a crossbow or a sickle, whatever object that person is good with defending themselves with. And then over time, as you gain comfort with the item, you can then mold it. I should have compared this. It's just like a Green Lantern ring, but it's a gun. And so it then becomes every other type of gun you can think of.
Nice.
That's pretty sweet.
So like it's not like Magic Coffee Machine that can give you like the blood of God or like alien money or whatever you type into it, but instead it's a gun that can be whatever you want it to be. But it still gets on that same like thought line of like really obtuse piece of mystical technology that can do anything you ask it to.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
No, I was just gonna say that like that comparison to SCP is a really good comparison because SCP is another sort of thing that just like the world building in terms of SCP is insane with all of the artifacts and all the creatures and everything that the SCP contains, that like you can just read pages and pages and pages of that stuff and it just never ends.
If I can get Dean to delete everything I've said before on Control, I'm just going to keep it with this is the SCP game. You go in and you find out you're the CEO of the SCP Foundation, and you got to go put all the SCPs back.
All right, well, we can touch on more in that, or we can touch on the SCP, I think, later if you want, but we should touch base with Everest about his favorite worlds then.
Yo. So this is where I want to talk about that specific trilogy that I've been playing through that I was talking about earlier, and that would be the Dark Souls trilogy.
Wow, what's that?
Wow, I've never heard of that. It sounds like it could define a genre or something.
It's like a dream.
It's the Dark Souls of video games.
Yeah. And so my friends have been trying to convince me to play Dark Souls for a while, and so I finally I started playing through them. I finished the first one not too long ago, and I'm like right about to finish the second one. Haven't played the third yet. But even just like the world building in those games is pretty insane. And I mean, it's kind of like a running theme that I've noticed with a lot of these like non-linear games that come to mind when Dean was originally telling me that we were going to record an episode about non-linear stories, is that like a lot of these games, their stories are like, because like they are linear stories, so to say, but like it's not really the protagonist story. Like it's pretty much the protagonist dealing with a story that's already taken place.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say that's like another comparison to like Outer Wilds is another sort of game where like you're not necessarily playing through the story, you're kind of dealing with its aftermath.
Right.
And then even like Breath of the Wild kind of touches upon this, but the story itself is kind of about figuring out what happened like 100 years ago. So I'd say that one's like a little more linear about it. But like games like Outer Wilds, I guess kind of makes you figure out what happened, but not entirely. Like there's a lot that you don't need to know that you can go out of your way to know. And I'd say the same thing is the same applies to Dark Souls, where like the story itself of Dark Souls, like what the protagonist actually goes through is very straightforward. You know, you gotta go ring the bells, you're the chosen undead, go get the what are they, like the sacred flames, and then go fight the final boss. And like it's very straightforward, but there's so many like details within just the overworld and within the like item descriptions that like a lot of people don't actually take their time to read, that like it really paints a much larger picture. And I think it really is a testament to Dark Souls' world building that there are entire like YouTube channels out there, such as I think it's called VatiVidya. All he does is just make Dark Souls content. Like he just pretty much makes content about the Dark Souls games and their stories and what the details in the game, like what sort of stories the details in the game tell. And I just think that's insane. And there's just a lot of details that kind of make the player ask questions that you don't really get the answer to by playing the game. You kind of have to do a lot of inferring from like the description of items or just the kind of like details in the overworld. And there's a couple examples, 2 examples that I think are really cool. Is one of them is kind of at like the climax, so to say, of the game. You go to this area called Anor Londo.
Of which one? And, 1 or 2?
1. Sorry,
okay.
I'm probably just going to talk about 1 here because I'm still finishing 2 and I'm still trying to kind of get my opinions on that one.
Gotcha. All right, just wanted to ask.
Yeah, no problem. At the climax, pretty much the climax of the game, you make it to Anor Londo, and it's this giant, like abandoned like kingdom, and it's like this gorgeous castle. And throughout the entire like first half of the game, you've just been running through like rotting, destroyed buildings and like Blight Town, which is a nightmare, and like all these gross, disgusting places. And then you conquer those areas, you ring the bells, and then you're taken to Anor Londo, and it's suddenly this like huge, gorgeous, pristine castle, but it's like completely abandoned at the same time. Like there's enemies, and there is a lot of enemies, but like other than that, like there's no people to talk to. There's no like, it just seems, something just seems off. And the game never really explains why, and the game never really talks about it. But if you actually go into the lore, and I had some of my friends had to like explain this stuff to me, like it actually does explain why everything's abandoned and why it's the way it is. And especially when you make it to like the throne room of Anor Londo, they have 3 statues to like represent like the 3 like people that were being worshipped at the time, or like the people who like ruled the kingdom of Anor Londo. And you see there's like the big statue of the king in the center, and then there's a slightly smaller statue right beside him. And then on the other side, there's a place for a statue, but the statue's completely missing. And there's nothing there. And again, like as like me playing the game for the first time and not really knowing the story yet, it just kind of makes like asks yourself, like, why is there a statue missing? It seems like there's supposed to be a statue there. And again, the game never explains why there's a missing statue there. But if you go into the lore and you read the description of items, you can piece together a story of like, there is supposed to be a statue there, but there's a reason that it's gone. And there's just a lot of moments like that in Dark Souls. And that's one of my favorite moments. Another one is there's an area you stumble upon later in the game. That's the New Londo ruins. And it's completely flooded with water. And the first half of the area, your main goal is to kind of drain the water so you can explore the bottom half of the level. And once you do drain the water, you finally make it to the end of the level. You drain the water, and then you can go down to the lower level that was originally flooded. And immediately, the entire floor of the area is just covered in corpses. And they are like everywhere. Like, it is a ridiculous amount of corpses. And specifically, they're all piled up around a gigantic door that was locked shut from the outside. And again, like, as somebody playing the game for the first time, like, you just have nothing but questions. Like, why is there so many corpses down here? Why were they drowned? Why are they all surrounding this water? Like, they were trying to, why are they all surrounding this door? Like, they were trying to escape. Why were they locked in? And once again, I've said it multiple times, but like, the game never explains why. It's kind of up to the player to just read context clues and to look into the lore of the game to figure out why that is. And really cool.
I feel something really similar with what you said on the first point with Anne Orlando and the missing statue. It's something that I was talking about when you guys were talking Outer Wilds, and then when I brought up Venture Bros, and then with Control. So like for Outer Wilds, it's like recordings, isn't it? It's like recordings and like notes, and then Venture Bros, it's like character references. For Control, it's like office forms, and then for Dark Souls, it's items where you get these little like breadcrumbs of a character and who they are, their motivation, etc. And then when you see the character themselves, everything clicks.
Right.
Yeah. And I guess to touch upon Anne Orlando really quick, because this is just like a fun little tidbit of like kind of little world building. The bosses, I guess, of that area, Ornstein and Smo. They're kind of like, knights, or they worked for Lord Gwyn.
Those guys are hard.
Yeah, but they're
I'm not good at games.
A little bit of like cool, like little world building, like just neato fact is once you beat them, to get to Guinevere, there's 2 elevators, and it took me like a moment to realize why would there be 2 elevators that lead to the same area. And then I realized, that's for Ornstein and Smo to go down through. Even though in the cutscene they just jump down.
Yeah. And so, there's just a lot of little details like that within the Dark Souls games. And specifically for anybody interested, I know there's a really cool video series that I forget what the YouTube channel is called, but like, it's called like 200 Secrets in Dark Souls. And like, it's just like an hour-long video of just like showing all these cool little like details that the developers didn't have to put into the game but decided to anyways, and it's really neat to see how the developers go above and beyond to really make the world feel so believable.
And that's why Elden Ring is never coming out, because they're gonna take 5 billion years to add details like that.
Oh, is that it? Maybe. Okay, that probably makes sense.
It's also because George R. R. Martin's a lazy hack.
Oh damn!
Oh my
That's
god!
Not fair, man. He's old.
Yeah,
he's so old.
We're all youthful here, Morgan. You can't.
You know what?
Attack someone
You sure
like that.
now, old man.
We should write the new Game of Thrones.
Honestly, yeah, I would do such a better job. As someone who's never read or watched any Game of Thrones, I would do so much better.
As someone who's never read a book in his life, I think I could do it.
Yeah, we do have like Gabe and I are both pretty strong world builders and writers, so.
So I just wanted to say this podcast is the Dark Souls of writing podcast.
Jesus Christ.
I think I said something like that last time we recorded.
It was the Dark Souls of podcasts, yeah.
Yeah.
Dark Souls references.
But Dark Souls is pretty cool. I see why all my friends like it.
Yeah. I've told you for years you should play it. And now he's played it.
One more thing, which I think we were all like consensusing on, is the level of detail in it. I think my favorite for the Ornstein and Smo fight is somewhat spoilers for Dark Souls. There's a storyline between Ornstein and Smo where Ornstein was like a very well-respected knight in the court of Anne Orlando, but Smo was not. He was an executioner and he was potentially a cannibal, so he was disgraced. And you see that in everything Smo does and how he acts. Like, he has this incredibly disgusting, distorted armor that kind of like is cheap armor. Like, it's fake out armor because he has this very high head, but it's to kind of fake out people so they'll swing for the fake helmet. He's got this nasty giant hammer, which is just a gross way to kill someone, just smushing them with a giant hammer. And then when you kill one of the members of that 2-pair boss, Ornstein will respectfully like lay his hand on Smo in like a rest gesture, and then if Smo dies first, Ornstein just destroys him with the hammer. He just mushes him with a pancake.
Executes him.
And then on the thing with details, and then when you brought up New Londo, I love this with Dark Souls, and I've noticed this with so many Souls ripoffs. They don't think about like the power of these names. I call it like the Atomic Betty effect, where if anyone remembers Atomic Betty, all the characters in the show have names that are just like goobledy garbage, which is okay because it's a kid's show. But like, did you just... Oh, sorry, my girlfriend squealed because she heard I said Atomic Betty. And so like a lot of Souls ripoffs will just have like Archduke of the Fallen Order or like Spider of the Astral Peak, and these don't mean anything, but like Dark Souls character names interact with each other. So there was Anor Londo, and then it's implied that New Londo, even though it's underground and drowned, came later, and it poses so many interesting questions as to why this bastion of a city was abandoned in exchange for an underground setting that was then also destroyed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it interesting?
Like,
oh, sorry.
Again, there's a reason why there are YouTube channels that get their entire living off of just talking about the lore of these games.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like, there's when they give you so much to talk about, it's only natural, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I gotta say, Dean, I know you like Google image stuff for like references when we're talking about this, and we brought up Guinevere earlier. I know how you reacted to Resident Evil 8. Don't Google Guinevere. I fear it will give you brain damage.
All right, I'm putting my phone down. All right,
The
thank you.
thumbnail for all the podcasts are just going to be big woman.
No.
All right, that's an inside joke that I hope they don't like fuck me or fuck me with. Fuck me. I don't know how to phrase it. I fucked myself. Don't look into that.
He doesn't have monetization. I'm assuming the channel doesn't have monetization, but like,
No.
You're definitely not having monetization now.
I don't doubt it. All right. Anyway, I guess now that I'm all flustered, just to kind of close off the world building section, like, you know, I asked the question earlier, but yeah, isn't it interesting just how much information can be packed when you either don't go, or I guess when developers aren't like actively telling you where everything is, right? And despite that, like, despite having like these gorgeous populated worlds, we do still need characters to fill them. And you know, that will be how we talk about characters, or, you know, non-linear storytelling relating to characters. As a quick explanation for this section, we'll be kind of going over like very character heavy games such as Overwatch and League of Legends that have a huge roster of characters, but there isn't a linear story kind of bringing everybody together. It's more or less just a cast, but they each have their own backstories, motivations that you could conceivably think of their own story for. Like, you can even write your own story for them, right? And just as a quick thing, as we've kind of come to our first hour of recording, I think we'll just kind of keep these next few sections relatively short. So, you know, obviously still share what you can, but if you're going to be like, if we're going to be talking about multiple things within this thing, then just group them into your section. So, yeah, for characters, I had mentioned Overwatch and League of Legends, and I think those are the two biggest examples of what I'm talking about. So Overwatch and League of Legends both have huge rosters of characters, but the game itself is never ever centered on just one of them, nor is it centered on a group of them. It is basically just it's basically just a multiplayer game with a bunch of characters that you can imagine your own stories to. And I think that's what makes it such a special thing, because however, I I guess like the creative potential that you can go with these stories just makes it fascinating. How you decide to, you know, from a creative writer like myself, how you can take Tracer's story from Overwatch and write her into doing or interacting with Widowmaker or Emily and stuff, like expanding on what the developers give you makes it such a fun thing when they have these huge rosters, because then keeping up with all of them I think can be difficult, and especially trying to hone in on just one perspective can be hard when you have such a rich cast of characters, which is why what was I trying to say? Which is why I think, like, in terms of non-linear storytelling, it's so fascinating exploring each or as many individual ones as you can, right? Like, you can resonate with Riven's story from League of Legends, or you can resonate with Pharah's from Overwatch. There is backstory there, and there is character motivations, so that you can kind of, I don't want to say project, I don't know if that would be the right word for it, but you can spin your own narrative as you go along. Right. You have a reason to, you know, you can, I guess, like with huge character rosters like this, it's a fan fiction's dream. Right.
Absolutely.
Or it's a fan writer's dream to do however much you want. Like, there's character ships, alternate universes, even progressing like the story that these things, or that developers give. Like with Overwatch, there's more of a narrative there compared to League of Legends, but they don't ever really solve it, right? There isn't really like a beginning, middle, and end with Overwatch's story. It's more like, or at least with the first game, it's Overwatch reuniting, and that's about it, right? You have an enemy in Talon, and you have the good guys in Overwatch, but ultimately there isn't much to do there unless you look into the comics or unless you read fan stories, which is great, because even with huge character rosters like that, it's so fun to watch the community expand on it, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 So that's what I mean when I'm talking about lore heavy characters, or lore heavy or character heavy games, I think. So there isn't a set narrative that contains all these characters at once, but how imaginative and how creative the community can be in telling its own stories with these characters, that is what makes it such a cool avenue to explore, I think. So I'll pass it off to you guys. Are there any games that come to mind are there any games that come to mind that you can see that in, or do you also want to expand to Overwatch or League of Legends? So I'll pass it off to Gabe first.
Okay, so I knew this was going to be a topic we were going to talk about on this podcast, and I struggled for months to find a game to talk about, because I don't play multiplayer games. I play almost exclusively single player games. So I was really straining to find a game that I could fit around this archetype, and I think I got one. I can't talk about a lot of what I love about this game, but I can talk about one aspect of it. So the game that I'm going to talk about is Prey, not the original Prey. I'm going to talk about the 2017 Arcane Prey reboot, which is an awesome game, fucking underrated as hell.
I agree.
Pisses me off every time I think about how under the radar this game is.
I agree. Prey is awesome.
So we were talking earlier about Outer Wilds and how a cool aspect in Outer Wilds is the Nome, and how I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know if there is a canon pronunciation. There's no dialogue, but you find out a lot about the Nome or the Nomai, and you can sort of read journals and pick apart, as we said, you can identify specific characters in these journals and stuff, and you can sort of track their journey across this solar system, and sort of in your and like it's not really like a defined story, but you can like piece together things, and like it sort of allows for a lot of like player input, like what you think, interpret like what could have happened. So I think Prey is a really good example of this sort of thing. So Prey, when you start out Prey, basically the whole game, so Arcane is very like has a very big reputation for like morality in their games. Like Dishonored has like a lot of attention drawn to its like karma system, where like everything's like a good or bad action. And with Prey, Arcane sort of developed on this. There isn't really a set moral compass, but the game is basically all about empathy and about like, I don't want to give spoilers for why. It's a massive spoiler. I wouldn't dare. But like, that essentially a lot of the game is built around like giving you not exactly obvious moral dilemmas, but situations involving this crew. And the crew has like a very set. There's a set number of crew. You can find crew lists in the game, and like with all the crew members on there. All the crew members have names. All of the crew members have like little pods or offices. You can find all of them. You can find out all like their secrets and like learn about them. And you can even find survivors aboard the space station, who like by searching through this stuff and like sort of piecing together like little breadcrumb trails of like where the survivors like would have gone up to. I should go back. I should explain what Prey's about. So basically, Prey takes place on a space station outside the moon. I forget what the space station is called. It has a cool name. I forget what it's called. But and essentially there is a invasion of a alien parasite called the Typhon on board the station, and you play as a scientist who basically the goal is to sort out the Typhon invasion. And throughout this game, there are a lot of like tiny little pieces and fragments of like stories about your crewmates, and the whole game is designed to like give you an impression that these are real people, and that these are real people with actual lives. And like it is obviously just a video game, but like when it gets to like some of the dilemmas in the game, you have a very real impression that like you're actually dealing with a person. You aren't just dealing with like a red or blue button press in a video game. You're dealing with like something that's very real and has consequences, and a lot of the time it does have consequences, and it's not like immediate earth-shattering consequences, but it'll be like there's a guy in a laboratory who, in order to proceed with a certain objective, you have to like continue through with a Typhon experiment that was going on in the lab, and this Typhon experiment will inevitably kill him. And this isn't inherently the moral dilemma. The moral dilemma comes later when you are rescuing a certain other crewmate, and you find out that this girl was actually the daughter of the guy who you killed earlier, and that's where the game starts to get funky with moral dilemmas over whether or not to make it clear what you did and bring evidence of like basically come forward with evidence of what you did to this girl. And the game gets really funky from there with just character moments and like just all this shit, all these like little secrets and mysteries with the crewmates. Another great example, there's like a billboard floating outside of the space station. You can see it when you come into the building, when you come into the lobby, and if you later in the game, when you get to go into space and like float around the station, if you float towards the station, you can find a crewmate who, if you like read through journals and stuff, you can see like he was going to the escape pods and he was bringing a group of people to the escape pods, and like and then if you go out there, you can find a dead escape pod floating around the billboard, and this guy with a wire from his little suit hooked up to the billboard, and you can go onto the computer and you can see that there was like a little hacking thing that he was doing on the billboard that he didn't get done because he died from like oxygen or something. And if you finish the billboard thing, the billboard suddenly changes from saying the space station's name to the escape pods are fake. And yeah, that's probably like a little personal favorite in that game.
Nice.
That's pretty sweet.
I've never seen that before in a game with you getting to piece together someone's failed attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from, I guess, like BioShock 2 is based a lot around it.
Also an arcane game. So.
Oh, huh.
Oh God, right.
So I checked it. The space station is Talos 1.
Right, yeah, that's what it is.
And I was looking at it because I know nothing about Prey aside from the story stuff in it.
I don't know.
I love how in the story it's supposed to have gone up in the 60s and 70s into space, and it really does give the feel of BioShock, but for the 70s. not like discotheque 70s, but like proper bureaucratic like 70s architecture and 70s like business style.
Oh yeah, this game is like that's a whole other conversation. I think a large part of why this game failed is because like it's called Prey. It has literally nothing to do with Prey. This is a BioShock game set in space, like full through and through.
This has nothing to do with the reserves, if you can believe it. Yeah, nobody knows about like the first Prey and like the whole.
Oh
story
yeah,
of
no.
it.
I remember the first Prey, and I remember what the second Prey was supposed to be.
Never played it, to be honest.
No, yeah, that sounds really cool. I remember I was really, really intrigued with that whole sort of like because it's like an entire system, right? Within the game that like there's like a list of crewmates and you kind of need to figure out what happened to every crewmate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought that was really neat, and it does really like go back to like Outer Wilds, where it's the similar kind of thing where like Outer Wilds doesn't blatantly have a system for it, but it's that similar sort of thing where you recognize a character through all of these like readings or all of these like context clues that you find in the overworld, and then you can actually like trace their entire story throughout the game until they met their demise or ended up escaping. It kind of also reminds me of games like Return of the Obra Dinn.
Right. Yeah, and like Outer Wilds, like there's not often a lot of blatant indicators, so a lot of the stuff is you'll get like a piece of information and then you personally have to like interpret what that might mean, and like you have to base your knowledge of the map and like your knowledge of the station on like what this little note like to a vague location could potentially mean from like understanding this character. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that.
Another game that I found Prey, whenever I'd see stuff about it, was really comparable to, as well as the story it told me about, is any of the new Deus Ex games. Like the older Deus Ex games are very personal with their stories, but ever since Human Revolution, the new Deus Ex games really focus on like big moral implications for the types of things that you do.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like especially the end of Human Revolution to that escape pods are fake one. Because Human Revolution, vague spoilers, Human Revolution somewhat ends with like you given the choice to like systematically gaslight the people of Earth in regards to like the existence of the Illuminati or the existence of like certain political radical groups. Like you're allowed to let them know if one side was right, the other side was right, or if the Illuminati's real.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it has like very strong mid-2000 PC game vibes just in terms of like how the game is. It's a cross between like Deus Ex, Half-Life, and BioShock.
Mm-hmm.
That's a solid form of energy to get mid-2000s PC energy.
So yeah, I think
make
like
me want to go back and play the game again. Sorry, keep going, Dean.
No, it's just like so I guess like going back to the topic, one of the big takeaways that I'm noticing is like it does a good job with highlighting identities for the crewmates and making you care about them. Right.
And like giving you a distinct impression that like these aren't just like a list of random names and like with no purpose behind them. Like it gives you a real impression that like these are individuals and not just like NPCs.
Right. All right. I guess with that being said, Morgan, feel free to.
Yeah. So I guess like. Okay, so I wanted to talk about Apex Legends and how it connects to Titanfall 1 and 2 and especially how bad one story is. Like it's kind of amazing how much it connects. Like a lot of like individual stuff. Like I guess like the character Mirage. His mother, like a lot of backstory is like his mother's actually the one that creates like the hologram technology in the Titanfall universe, and that's why his whole playstyle is based off using like the illusions and like faking out opponents. And then there's stuff like one of my favorite characters in the game, both story and gameplay wise, Octane, because there's the whole gimmick with him is he's super fast, but he has like these robotic legs. And the reason why you learn out why he does not have his legs anymore is because he grenade boosted himself, which is an actual technique that is used in the speedrunning community of Titanfall 2, and in particular the very beginning like running course section. And so it's like just little nods like that makes me go, wow, you could fit that into a multiplayer game, and specifically a battle royale like Apex Legends. Next thing I know, like I don't know, I don't see something like Warzone doing anything that like hype. They'll just be like, hey, look, it's that character from that other game. Clap your hands.
It's Nuketown.
Hey, look, it's Nuketown. Hey, look, it's Ghost. Hey, look, it's Captain Price.
Remember Nuketown?
How can I not remember it with how many iterations there are of that frickin' map?
Yeah. I got you though. Like it's been a while since I've thought about Apex Legends, Morgan, but they really do a good job with like making each character, with similar to Overwatch and League of Legends, each character has their own unique story, and not just playing into the narrative of like, everyone participating in the battle royale, but like individually through expanding or, through expansions such as fan stories, comics. It really fleshes out, or it really gives a lot of depth to what is essentially just, oh, here's a character with abilities A, B, and C. Maybe you'll win with them, maybe you won't, right?
Yeah, here's a robot that has a grappling hook and spouts one-liners.
Yeah, he's got a little thing. He's got a little smiley on his chest.
Yeah, he somehow has more depth than any other like multiplayer shooter I could think of.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably like a benefit. Like I think that's a huge benefit to it, because it's good to sell a story on top of thing. Because Warzone is Warzone. You can hop in with friends and do whatever, but when you have long term, or like when you want to have long-term investment, especially from a community, giving personality to your characters is important, right? Even if you don't ever like hone in on their story as a traditional narrative, then at least through the community you will have plenty of people, you'll have plenty of people investing in their individual story, right?
Yeah. So shout out to Titanfall 1 for actually having one of the worst stories in like in a first person shooter, because it was just a multiplayer only game, and then they would have characters talking in the background. And then Titanfall 2 actually had a proper story.
Mm-hmm. And then Apex Legends helped flesh out the world.
Yeah. It made me go, hey, look, it's that thing. Insert GIF of Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at screen.
Oh God, you're gonna put editing me through a lot of work, dude.
Yes.
Can we redo the podcast if we're allowed to give Dean like annotations for GIFs and
Jesus
stuff?
Christ.
Please insert bra sound effect number 2.
I hate you.
Please insert music video here.
Look, all I'm saying
What
is
music
it's not
video,
like
though?
editing a Let's Play and you just hear someone moaning in the background. And you have to like cut that
I am
out.
not putting that in this. You
Morgan.
All right, we're getting off track. Michael, how about you? Any key games with a huge roster of characters, or
On a more important note, for music video, I'm either going to say, because you're getting me right on the spot, either the music video for "Missing You" by Boston Bun.
I didn't ask you for this, by the way.
Don't worry, I got you.
Oh my God.
it's a bunch of kids doing really sick wheelies on bikes, or the classic Virtual Insanity music video by Jamiroquai. Everest knows what I'm talking about. Morgan knows what I'm talking about. Where he's just in this room and the floor is moving, and that's the whole video. It's really sweet. I'll take those, thank you. So I'll admit I had an idea for this because I didn't come very much prepared. Sorry. I didn't have an idea, and then I had one when Dean talked, but I got too into conversation with Greg about Prey, and I was
You mean Gabe?
just Gabe. Sorry, Gabe. I was thinking Greg, but it's Gabe. Sorry, Gabe. So I got too into the conversation with Gabe about Prey, and then I lost track. But I think I'm back on track with it. So I'll probably just come at this from my own experience with writing, and I'm just really bad with characters or taking note of characters. So I'm instead just gonna do maybe like 2 or 3 games and then just say these characters blank. I find my personal favorite characters and favorite stories come about when every character in a game goes towards a certain point. Like, I think the most obvious video game wise, which is my first and best example, is every single character and every single side story and motivation in Doom, and especially Doom Eternal and the new Doom games. Really, everything past the N64 one is meant to give this feel of like a metal album come to life. Like, every character will do these absolutely absurd things for the sake of like an incredibly strong evil emotion. So like Doom Guy has killed like I think 3 gods at this point over the course of a week, because slight spoilers for Dune, someone killed his rabbit and he's just so angry that he has gone on to commit multiple genocides. There's a character in Doom named Samuel Hayden, and he's like this Elon Musk character who's so obsessed with power, he turns himself into a Tesla robot and goes to war with hell because he lives off the war economy. Like these characters give off the theme of like intense anger or passion, and from that you then feel very angry and passionate with Doom. Or like another example in my list is Death Stranding, where yes, every character is weird and they say really awkward shit, but the idea is that Death Stranding takes place in a future where people grow up in incredibly intense isolation to the point where your best relationships are with your delivery package people.
No, anything but that.
Your postmans are the most important people in your life. I love it because Death Stranding was the most like absurd auteur game, and then come this year, it's just like it's just real world.
It's crazy
Oh
how
my
Kojima
God.
predicts everything, huh?
There's a few I'll have to tell Everest after the podcast because they're a little appropriate, but like it's absurd, honestly.
I say for anybody who doesn't think that Kojima doesn't know how to predict the future, just look up the ending to Metal Gear Solid 2.
2? Yeah, as I say.
That will blow your mind. That game came out in 2001.
I thought you were going to talk about the end of Revengeance, where Jack fights that guy that's going to make America great again. Then
Don't get Gabe fucking started on Revengeance. He tells me about Revengeance all the time.
Look, all I'm going to say is the Metal Gear series is the Simpsons of video games.
It's really weird because like the Simpsons had 30 years and the Metal Gear games do it in like 20 hours. They just say so much so fast. Like they're gonna get something right.
Yeah.
So like my last example would be bringing it back home to Control. Every single character in Control is really boring, and that's a fantastic strength to the game because you're not interested in these characters for what they're thinking or what they feel. You just really want to hear what they're gonna say. Like my favorite character in all of Control is this secretary named Pope, and Pope doesn't do anything. She just sits at her desk and will tell you about all the crazy shit that has gone on in this. Sorry, can we swear here? My bad, I swore.
I've been swearing, dude. It's fine.
That's a good point. But like just this absolutely crazy stuff. Like she tells you about the shark in Boardroom Incident, and she's like, isn't that just crazy? The stuff you see at work. And like it's just so like day-to-day 9-to-5 job with these people that I think it then brings to the fore this theme of the game being weird but normal.
Right.
The characters are normal. They have weird things to say, and therefore when you're playing the game it feels mundane, but it's all completely out there.
Nice. All right.
So I'd probably say if like the whatever game we were talking about before where that person said it would be like if David Lynch made a game, I'd honestly say like Alan Wake or Control would be that. Because Lynch has like a very strong tone for it's completely normal, but the subject matter itself is just completely off the wall.
Mm-hmm.
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 Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry.
That's the typical thing. That's the typical podcast host response. You got it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's funny because when I was talking about Kentucky Road Zero, and I was saying like it's like if David Lynch made a video game, I was saying like a lot of people say that Control is like if David Lynch made a video game.
Yeah, like from everything I've seen with Kentucky Road Zero, I didn't want to say it because I felt like I just ramble into my game, but Kentucky feels a lot more like kind of like if Ray Bradbury wrote a game. Actually, I've been reading Ray Bradbury stories recently. They're very
that's a very good comparison.
They're very much more down to earth. The idea is more about getting wrapped up in the emotions of these characters, not doing too much, but they can have magical elements. Because with David Lynch, it is like pushing into your face that it's normal, but it's the most unnormal thing you could conceive of, which is like Control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Everest, you can close out this section now if you've got any particular examples.
Oh, believe me, I do. No, I'll try to keep it quick.
Dark Souls.
But basically, you're mentioning a lot about like League of Legends and Overwatch, and I do think that those games, do a great job at that sort of like the characters interacting with the world, and just like you said, like it's like a fan fiction paradise, and I kind of agree with that. But I want to go back to the game that arguably started it all, that being Team Fortress 2.
Oh boy.
You all probably saw this coming, but the one thing that I think that Team Fortress 2 that makes it unique from the other games is that I don't think, at least like, because I don't know for sure, but I don't think that Valve really had the intention of making the 9 mercenaries of Team Fortress 2 have as much character as they ended up having. As far as I know, it seems, especially you can kind of tell from like the original Meet the Team videos that they released when the game first came out, that like really their intentions with the game was just to kind of have these goofy like caricatures as playable characters, and that was about it.
Right.
But then slowly, because like with games like League of Legends, or at least League of Legends now, I think League of Legends kind of started off the same way, but like games like current League of Legends and Overwatch, like the developers were very like they knew that they wanted to make these characters with like these fleshed out backstories and these crazy like interactions with each other. Like they knew that from the start that they wanted to do that, and they wanted to create this like quote unquote like fan fiction paradise.
Yeah.
But I think with Team Fortress 2, that was never the intention, and it was something that just kind of naturally evolved as the game like progressed through the years. And I just think it's really neat because if you look at like the promotional materials and stuff for Team Fortress 2, when it first came out, like the characters feel so much more bland than they do nowadays. And it's because since then there's been so many, like there's been comics, and there's been, as like Source Filmmaker shorts, and there's been like lore events that have just like taken place within the universe that have really made these 9 random mercenaries all such like fully fleshed out characters. And like I just like me personally, I love Team Fortress, and I'm just absolutely in love with like all the mercenaries because they're such like clear, like they're just such good characters, all of them, and they bounce off of each other so well. And you can see that within the animations, especially Expiration Date, which is a 15-minute short that you can watch on YouTube, which was actually the pilot for a failed Team Fortress 2 television show that was going to be on Adult Swim. And I think
I didn't know that.
the fact that they were going to make a television show just featuring these 9 mercenaries, I think really goes to show the strength that these characters had become over the years. And like it's just really interesting because like you take a character like Soldier, who I think when they first developed Soldier, they just wanted him to be like the traditional like gung ho manly soldier, you know, loves America, loves Eagles, loves barbecues, and like and it was just supposed to be a caricature of like American culture. But then like as the years have gone by, he's morphed into this character that's like pretty well, all the mercenaries are psychopaths, you could argue, but like Soldier is like mentally ill. Like he is not okay. And the game like and that's just like details like that have just come out as the games have gone by. And like in the lore, he doesn't even like nobody knows who his name is because he just appeared one day and they were like, okay, you're hired, work for Manco. And like I don't think that was ever intended for his character when the game first came out, but he's now this like he's developed into this like insane homeless person that likes shooting rockets and blowing people up. And you can say the same thing about like practically every character. Like even the comic books within the last couple of years decided to go as far as to say that Sniper isn't even Australian. He's actually from New Zealand, and his parents shot him in a rocket. Basically to Australia from New Zealand, because in the Team Fortress universe, New Zealand got flooded, and he basically has a Superman origin story where he was sent to Australia and raised by 2 Australian farmers. And
what the fuck?
I highly doubt that was ever the intention when the game first came out, but it's made such like fleshed out and like well-designed characters that like everybody loves. Like Team Fortress 2 characters are still relevant to this day. You see them all over YouTube, and people make source filmmakers and comics and fan art, and like it's just great. They're such entertaining characters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So to add on, if you guys are really interested in the comics, just simmer your hopes down. There hasn't been like another, like the last issue was like what 2-3 years ago, maybe even longer, and there's no signs of a new issue.
Yeah, they were doing a whole storyline with the comics, and then they said, "Oh, hey, the next comic's going to be the big finale," and then they never released them.
Because
in true Valve fashion.
Because there's literally only like 3 people working on Team Fortress 2 at the moment. Because everyone is working on the maybe Half-Life 3 VR game.
So that's my rant about how much I love the Team Fortress 2 character.
It's a pretty valid rant, yeah. And I think you're right. Like Team Fortress 2 was probably, to my memory, like one of the earliest games that popularized the huge cast of personalities that a lot of multiplayer shooters have. Like for one thing, you were mentioning, you know, just around the whole thing on fans expanding these these characters into something more. Look at KDA from League.
Yeah,
it's kind of off tangent, but like, you know, who would have thought that 4 completely different characters within League of Legends from completely different backstories somehow work as a international girl group, and everyone's just okay with it.
No, I think it's really a testament to the characters in League of Legends and how like well designed and how fleshed out they are, that Riot is able to make imaginary universes within the imaginary universe of League of Legends, featuring these characters.
Also, I just want to add, KDA is essentially the prototype VTuber.
Jesus Christ, Morgan, you really have to ruin everything, don't you?
Look, all I'm saying is watch a couple HoloLive EN streams. They're great.
Tie into that as well with like fans and like fans affecting characters as well. I think that also is something that can tie into Team Fortress 2, because even like fans started creating like fan canons that Valve eventually just decided to add into the story of Team Fortress. Mm-hmm. Like within comics a couple of years ago, it was finally revealed that because the characters, like their names are Scout and Demo Man and like Heavy, and like they don't have actual names, but the comic started going out of its way to give the characters names, and a lot of those names were based off of like actual like fan canons, so to speak, where like the fans just kind of created names for these characters, and then the Valve developers decide like, yeah, you know what, those are their names. And in one specific case, the name of the Scout was revealed in one of the more recent Team Fortress 2 comics, and his name was revealed to be Jeremy. And recently in an interview, it was revealed that they decided to go with the name Jeremy because there is actually a famous YouTuber, he's now a Twitch streamer, named Germa985, who used to play a lot of Team Fortress, and people used to make jokes that like he looked like the Scout, and he was even
that's the reason?
Yes.
Huh.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so he
That's
looks
crazy.
like people used to make jokes that he looks like the Scout, and he even comes from Boston, which is where the Scout comes from, and he played Team Fortress. So it's just a running joke that like he was the Scout, and his real life name is Jeremy. And so the developers decided to just go right ahead and give the official Scout in the game the name Jeremy.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so I think that's another also like kind of example of like how the characters in Team Fortress have evolved over the years into these like really well, they've gone from caricatures to like really well fleshed out characters, which is so enjoyable.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, you know, characters are what fuel a lot of really good stories, right? Like you can, you know, we've said this in previous podcast episodes, but you can have gorgeous living, breathing worlds, but ultimately if your characters aren't the ones tying you to it, then what was the point of even focusing on them in the first place, right? So as we're nearing our second hour, we should yeah, so we have one final subtopic to go on, and that's just sharing some of our favorites non-linear stories. So like I said in the intro, which feels like a very long time ago, but anyway, these are just things. This is just going to be an opportunity for us to share some stories that don't have a traditional point A to point B ending. Like there's multiple branching stories. Like I'm familiar that you know, as one game I'm going to talk about in particular that has it kind of ends on a two-way ending, but having that choice kind of qualifies it enough. I'm familiar that Nier Automata has multiple branching endings and a bunch of consequences to go with that. So, you know, stuff like that. So to start, I've talked about this game how many times now, but it is my fourth favorite game of all time for a reason, and that is Life is Strange. Like I'd said, the entire game ends with only two options. You either sacrifice Chloe or you sacrifice the town. And I don't know who the fuck sacrifices the town, and if you do, you don't believe in love. Anyway.
I sacrifice the town.
Michael, how dare you?
I did it because I hate Warren.
Okay. What am I saying? If you sacrifice the town, you're completely valid. If you sacrifice Chloe, you don't believe in love. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
I was for a second. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. My brain was kind of messed up.
Hate Warren.
I sacrifice the town because I am an eco-anarchist.
I sacrifice. What the hell, guys? I'm sacrifice the town because I believe in love.
Listen.
No, like I would sacrifice the town and leave.
Love genocide.
All right. Anyway, despite the fact that it gives you the two options, I still think because of how Life is Strange is that it qualifies as a non-linear story, because there are so many different avenues that you can explore as Max that kind of changes it from a traditional thing, that kind of changes it from a traditional point A to point B narrative, or a linear narrative, basically. Like you have so many different possibilities of interactions with Chloe and with Chloe's stepfather, who I forget the name of, but also you have different interactions with Max, Victoria, all these characters that really that doesn't just flesh out these characters and their backstories, but it also just makes you feel more invested because every decision you make counts. And that's the beauty, I think, of non-linear stories. Like every decision you make could either be a wrong one, a really wrong one, or something that'll make you happy. And I think like on that, because I've already talked about Life is Strange enough, this game, or this next game that I'm going to quickly talk about, I don't talk about enough because I haven't played in forever, and that is Papers, Please.
Ooh.
Yeah. So Papers, Please, in a very simple setup, you are a tollgate worker for the fictional city, or for the fictional, I guess, dictatorship, or like socialist country, like it's thing. You're basically a tollgate worker letting people into the fictional city of Aristotska, and the whole thing is that you have to decide if these people are worthy of going to, or if these people are like properly able to enter the city or not. That places a lot of decision on you, especially as the game progresses, because then the choices get harder and harder and harder. Do you let this homeless man in? Do you let this couple in, or do you let do you turn away the wife of a couple just because her papers weren't there? Do you stop a sniper from halfway through? Do you stop running, or do you stop people from running up the gate into Aristotska? There are so many decisions that you make from a very simple game that come the end of it, I think, or come the end of the experience, you have 20 different endings? I think there's so many different ways as to.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, there's about 20 plus. That's a lot.
Yeah, there are so many ways that your experience with Papers, Please can end, and that makes it so fascinating, I think, as a non-linear story, because however you decide to play it, it's really reflective of who you are as a person. It's not trying to tell the story of this specific tollgate worker. It is you who is controlling that. It is you who's controlling these decisions, and how these people get into Aristotska, how these people are rejected out of Aristotska, how these people die at the gate probably. It is all on you. And I think, or I don't know why I haven't talked about I don't know why I haven't talked about Papers, Please before on the podcast, because the implications of the choices you make, like I said, are very reflective of who you are. And that, I think, is something that non-linear stories, or especially non-linear video games, gives you the opportunity to explore. It gives you the chance to step back from a single protagonist perspective and puts you in the middle of it in a way that no other medium really can. Right? You have RPG games that kind of thrust you into an open world, but with RPG games, there's plenty of magic and wonder to kind of distract yourself. But with Papers, Please, it locks you into a single gate while also having to provide for a family that you don't really ever meet. And you have to prioritize their health, yours, and all of these people. And it's either everyone walks away safe, or you're all dead. And I love that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, on the topic of Papers, Please, if you ever want the idea of how to do really good comic relief character, just look further to the character of Georgie. Easily best way to relieve tension in a game like Papers, Please, when needed. Seriously, that guy is hilarious.
Yeah, I'm yet to play Papers, Please, but I really like Return of the Obra Dinn, which was by the same developer, and it's been on my playlist for a while. But yeah, it's just it seems like one of the I think maybe part of the reason why I haven't played Papers, Please yet is maybe because I don't necessarily want to deal with the actions I may or may not make within a game like that. I don't know if I'm ready to learn that side of myself just yet.
I killed off a lot of people.
And I feel like Papers, Please is really interesting in that regard, because it's one of those games that really makes the player kind of stop and reflect on their actions. Damn, I really just denied that. I really just denied that family.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really interesting, and it's a really, really neat kind of way to elicit response from the player.
Mm-hmm. It's almost I know it's kind of fucked up, but it's almost like Retail Simulator. Do you deal with the really shitty people,
yes. Or as someone who works retail, yes, I could very much relate.
Yeah, who are the people that you give a smile to? Who are the people that you bite your lips to contain your anger to, right? How is it that you as a person react to the people around you. I think that's what makes Papers, Please like a very good non-linear story, because there's how many different ways that your position as a toll booth worker can end, right? Obviously with the 20 plus endings, it makes it so that, you know, the decisions that I made will probably not be as reflected the same as the ones that Morgan's made or the ones that Everest will make when he plays it. It's just, it's the perfect representation of everyone's choices and how they're all different, and they can either vastly benefit or vastly fuck up someone else's life. I love that. So, yeah, those are my two favorite, I guess, traditionally non-linear stories. Gabe, how about you?
Yeah, I have a small handful of like non-linear games that I just love. So we talked a little bit about Life is Strange, and I do want to say I love Life is Strange. I think Life is Strange is great, and I love Night in the Woods, and I think Night in the Woods is great. But there's this game called Oxenfree that's like
yes,
in that same vein, and like Oxenfree throws those games in the dumpster, no lie.
I was gonna say I didn't want to be mean.
Oxenfree is like, okay, so the premise of Oxenfree is that you're this girl, Alex, and you and your friends are going on a little trip to this island, and some spooky shit starts happening, and you and your friends gotta get the fuck out. And like, this game is super simple. You can basically complete it in 2 hours, and there aren't really like there aren't branching narratives, but what this game does extremely effectively is the branching like relationships you can have with the other teenagers that you're traveling with. It's so fucking complex and so like tightly wound. Like, there are only, I think, like the three actual major changes you can make in the ending. But when the ending comes on, you basically get like a little recap of like where your relationships are at. And I don't think I have ever seen like the same ending twice. I've played through this game a bunch of times, and I don't think I've ever seen this exact same set of like where Alex's relationship is with these characters twice in a row. Like, their relationships are just so deep, and you can make like really tiny like dialogue decisions that don't necessarily come up immediately, but like they can have huge ramifications on like your friendship and like how that evolves, and how like what people think about you based on like really tiny things you say. It's really fucking great. And like the dialogue is almost ridiculously well written. Like, this is one of the few games with like a cast of teenage characters where like I legitimately feel like this was written by teenagers, or like at very least like people in their 20s. Like, this doesn't like I love Life is Strange, but one of the issues I kind of have with Life is Strange is that there are little moments where I'm like, oh yeah, this was written by like 30-year-olds. I can
Frenchman trying to connect with your North American teenager.
Like, whatever the game is doing character moments. Yeah, exactly. Like, whenever the game is doing character moments, it's great. I think like the actual serious writing is fantastic, but whenever the game is trying to be like hashtag relatable, it sort of it doesn't really go over so well. But I think Oxenfree does that really well, because like these characters are super relatable, but they're not like no one's out here quoting memes. No one's out here wait.
Gabe. Yeah. You're saying the character writing sometimes isn't the most realistic in Life is Strange? You could go fuck yourselfy. Swear to God.
I can't believe he's trying to tell me this game's writing isn't hella cash. There's an otter in my water, and I need him to get out.
Oh my fucking God.
Oh my God, are you serial?
This is now the Life is Strange cast.
Yeah, we're now just going ape.
Yeah.
God, it's my fourth favorite game, guys. Don't fucking ruin it for me.
Listen. I don't want to shit on Life is Strange, because I think Life is Strange has like, I think Life is Strange gets really unfairly shit on in the gaming community for some of those aspects, I do think it has a lot for it in terms of like actual writing and like actual plot. I think that's all well and good. I don't want to like call the game a bad because of that, because I definitely don't think that.
We're all just teasing. We love Life is Strange here.
I'd have to say the opposite for Gabe's, that I don't know if Life is Strange has points in it that are inaccurate. Like I from the little I've seen of Oxenfree, but I know virtually nothing about it. Oxenfree has like an accuracy to the characters and their age, but also it is like, I wouldn't say good character writing. Both Life is Strange and this have good character writing, but the characters in Oxenfree have much more likability. I think the thing that makes Life is Strange's like dialogue and characters less relatable is that they are slightly too good. I know too many people who talk exactly like Life is Strange characters, and I don't think they would speak any differently from those characters. But I think there's like a refining process you could do that I've seen Oxenfree, I've seen Night in the Woods do to make it stay realistic, but also give it more character to it instead of it simply just being very realistic things people would say.
Right.
Yeah, there's I've talked about this with like movies and stuff. There's a director who I can't even remember it, Joe Swanberg, I think, whose movies I absolutely like. I can't stand them because like they're all very. I can tell like he really wants to emulate reality in his writing, but he doesn't understand that like actual conversations are just like real like small talk is just not very interesting to watch in a movie, and his movies are almost all small talk. Like I think there's a difference between like emulating reality to the point where it just becomes like too much, and then like it's distinctly fictional, but it's like still really good.
I'm looking at his movies currently, and they all look very realistic and relatable. I think the movie I'm gonna watch first is Hannah Takes the Stairs.
I was gonna say,
it
like,
sounds like a movie about real people.
I wanted to say, like, I guess slightly going slightly towards the movie side. If you want someone like who writes kind of like say Life is Strange, but like make it, or like something like Oxenfree, but makes it a little more engaging and like less realistic. Someone like Aaron Sorkin, who's I think most memorable for like The Social Network. That like he's someone that totally gets that. Without getting to the, oh, look, I'm totally relatable.
Like, no one actually talks like people talk in Aaron Sorkin movies, but like, it's so well written that that your brain just bypasses realism, and it's like, I'm just so fucking into this.
I think Edgar Wright does something similar with his comedy, where nobody has. Even like really good improv comedians don't have back and forths this solid, but it feels as funny as it would in the moment when you have those back and forths with people.
Right.
Yeah. On the topic of comedy, the second game I wanted to talk about in terms of like non-linearity was a game that basically says "fuck you" to linearity, and it's Stanley Parable.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I love Stanley Parable.
Such a good idea.
If you didn't mention Stanley Parable, I was going to mention Stanley Parable.
Okay, well, yeah.
No. I have another game.
Yeah, Dean, have you ever played Stanley Parable?
I'm familiar with it. I haven't gotten my hands on it myself, but I know what it's about.
Yeah,
They're releasing a new version soon. You should buy it.
Stanley Parable is amazing. Like, basically, it's like it's the idea of like branching stories and branching narratives, except instead of like the way that a lot of games do it, where it's like it's branching stories, but everything sort of still leads to like the same general area, or there's like two branching bits at the end, but it still mostly leads down the same path. Stanley Parable, every little decision you make leads you down a completely different narrative that has nothing to do with any of the other narratives. There's like you can go down one path and you'll find out that like the company that Stanley works for is like a fake company, and like there's like a whole bunch of surveillance shit, and like everything is your whole reality is a lie, and you can like choose whether or not to exit or like stay inside like your little matrix reality. And then in another ending, you go crazy and jump out of the window and you're just dead on the sidewalk. There's no rhyme or reason to like the connections between the endings. There's just there's like just a million branching endings from like each tiny little decision that you make from where you go and whether or not you're going to listen to like what this narrator tells you. And the narrator is fucking amazing, no matter what path you go down to.
The way that I usually describe the Stanley Parable for people that like have never heard of it is, you know how in most games like Life is Strange or Walking Dead, your first choice and your first delineation of story maybe takes place like 2-3 hours in, and you still have the consistent character of like you're Lee, you're trying to keep yourself alive and Clementine alive, or you're I'm blanking, but you're the girl from Life is Strange, and you're trying to like just get through school, figure out your powers, and then like also keep Chloe alive.
Right.
Or you're Max. There we go. So Stanley Parable has it where you just get up from your desk, turn out the hall, and there's a T in the hallway, and the narrator says Stanley then went to the right. And you can just take a left and have a completely different game. And the narrator will follow you through that. For the first little while, he will be getting angry that you did not go right, but eventually he'll live with it.
It's awesome. There's so many interactions between Stanley and the narrator, and just the way you can interact with the world, and just like how many different endings there are to begin with, just from like Gabe was saying, all of the like small details. Like you can straight up just get an ending at the beginning of the game if you decide to stay in your office and shut the door.
If you want to be a wage slave.
Yeah. It's awesome. I freaking love the Stanley Parable. One year at a Comic Expo, I found a shirt that says Employee 427, and I bought that immediately. It's one of my favorite shirts.
That's awesome.
I feel like this would be Everest, but has anyone here gotten the baby cake ending from Stanley Parable?
No.
Oh, I've seen it, but no, not personally.
I don't think so.
It's this really stupid completionist ending where like you go into the secret room because kind of like Control, it's a big like testing facility, and there's this one where it's like I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember it 100%, but like there's a thing with a baby and the baby's on a conveyor belt, and it's like a fake baby. It's not a real one, but like you keep it on the conveyor belt so it doesn't fall into a fire. And the mini game is basically just you pushing the baby a little bit for 2.5 hours.
It's actually 8 hours.
It's 8 hours, my bad.
It's like a desert bus type beat.
I would think of it like No Luca No, where you're just kind of pushing ever so slightly for hours on end. And then, at the end you get a cake, and that's the ending for that one.
Yeah.
Of course, Michael would reference an Xbox Live arcade game like No Luca No.
No Luca No.
Yeah.
No.
There's the Minecraft ending from when the narrator gets sick of you deviating too far from the path, and he's like, fine, you want a stimulating experience? And he just chucks you into Minecraft.
Really?
I haven't heard of that one.
My favorite ending's the broom closet ending. Have you gotten the broom closet ending?
Tell us
I think so.
It's it's a joke. It's Stanley Parable.
I'm
Shout out
gonna
to
be honest, I haven't.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gabe.
I haven't played this game in a long time because I'm trying to get the go outside achievement.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
that's what I was gonna bring up. Shout out to the go outside achievement.
Well, how long is it again?
It's 5 years.
5 years.
What the fuck?
Not play the game for 5 years.
I remember I threatened my ex, like she was just pissing me off. You know what? I'm gonna open up Stanley Parable right now. Swear to God.
It was actually great that we talked about this because I'm reinstalling it right now because I realize I've passed the threshold. I haven't played since 2015, so I'm like,
hell yeah.
I haven't played since August 8th, 2015. I can get the ending now too.
This could be the Open Up Stanley Parable in 5 years podcast now.
Oh my god. It's a time capsule, basically. All right. Wow, that was a wild tangent. I like that.
Yeah.
I always I'm pretty sure a lot of other podcast hosts would probably hate me for this, but like, yeah, I encourage banter and I encourage tangents. So,
wait, you like having fun in your podcast? Cringe. What?
Yeah,
Cringe
honestly.
and not based.
Slight off tangent. So I have to edit. So, I would typically edit these down to like 30 minutes. For like a quick recap series. Holy shit, how much it's gonna be hard deciding what I have to what I'm gonna be including in this recap. But anyway, Morgan, some of your favorites.
I'll speed on this. I'm gonna speedrun this. I mentioned this in the last podcast I was on this lovely podcast, but The Binding of Isaac. Still a great way of doing little bits of storytelling via items, besides, Dark Souls, of course. Just really great story overall. Just a lot of hints towards, religion and all that. Shout out to Repentance, which is the final DLC coming in March, which was originally a fan-made expansion, now made official. That is amazing. Going on to my second game, because yes, I'm speedrunning this. This is a game, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's a game I definitely enjoy, especially in a multiplayer setting. Have any of you guys heard of Monster Prom or Monster Camp?
I have heard of Monster Prom. I've had a friend really recommend me Monster Prom.
Yeah, so the whole goal of Monster Prom is you're just a monster. And you want to ask out, if it's Monster Prom, you want to ask them out to prom. If it's camp, you want to watch the meteorite shower with them. And a lot of it will always, every run, because it's just, you're competing with friends to match with the girls or guys you want. But throughout runs, there will be a lot of details from past runs. You'll be like, oh, I remember that. To give an example, in Monster Camp, there's the big titty goth Jeff. She's like a magical witch girl, and she refers to past memories as seasons, because she's basically an anime protagonist, and she talks about season in one match. She's talking about her ex-boyfriend from season 3, who was just a massive gaslighter. And involves a Fleetwood Mac t-shirt and all that. And then I remember in a future run, we came across another ex of hers, from season 7, and they bring up that previous character. And it's just details like that that makes me laugh and really like to play the game. Again, it's a very fun social game. Pick it up. It's $15 on Steam, not even.
I think this is just turning into a podcast where we're all recommending games for each other.
Yeah. Also, Ollie
As it
Mask
is.
Girl. That's all I'm going to say, because she's a drunk ghost. Okay, pass it on to Michael.
So, I initially felt like we'd reached the peak with the conversation about Stanley Parable, because I feel like Stanley Parable is the penultimate non-linear game. It sells, delivers, and then over exceeds with everything in regards to not being straight. It's every other angle except a straight path, and that's amazing. Did someone just say gay game?
Yeah, that's what I just said. And I could say
we
that.
could talk about Life is Strange, talk about real gay game.
True.
We could talk about Wonder Why. Is that the new one? Because that's trans.
Tell me
game.
why.
Tell me
Why.
There ain't nothing.
Not a heartbreak.
Oh my God.
But instead, then I came up with a second one while scrolling, because I did the Dean thing and I looked up on Google nonlinear games.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about talking about the multiplayer aspect of nonlinearity, how things like MMOs, MMORPGs, and fighting games in their nonlinear nature allow for all this communication in a community form, which is amazing. But instead, I wanted to talk more about these random joke answers that I thought of. So my two favorite ones are in Prince of Persia / Indigo Prophecy. When the character dies,
yeah, they're just this is how my story ends. It doesn't end like that.
You find out that they've been telling a story and they are the narrator. So when they die, they say, that's not how it happens. Wait, I'm wrong. Implying that they are in this geriatric state where they'll just be saying a story and be like, and then I jumped off a cliff and died. Wait, no, that's not how it happened. And they've just said this to the person they're telling the story to hundreds of times. Think if I told you a story about when I went out last weekend and 3 or 4 times I just trailed off to say I got shot, and I'm like, nah, that didn't happen.
Oh god.
God, you really flipped the head on this one, didn't you?
A really minute angle of how non-linearity can be used for just a really cheap joke.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Dark Souls and BioShock do it as well, where they explain away the death. They explain why characters die, and they might go do side things, but it all comes back to the main story. This one kind of just relates to this really, really, really stupid joke I love to do with my girlfriend, where if she'll be playing something and she dies, I'm like, okay, game's over, now turn the system off. And that's the Nier Automata chip ending, where you can chain. Everyone here knows what I'm talking about, but for people at home listening, at Nier Automata, there's a system of storage based around you being an android, and so you have various chips, and you can take out certain chips for others. What gives it a nice extra layer of freedom is you can handicap yourself as a player to then put in other items. So like you could remove your HUD or your map, and that'll give you some extra storage for like extra damage. But it goes to the furthest extent where you can remove the ability to see the game world for extra storage. And the one right at the bottom is your OS, which is your operating systems chip, and it'll warn you, but you can still take it out if you want, and then you just turn off because you don't have an OS, because you're a computer, and you're dead, and that's the game. Credits roll.
And it's one of the endings.
It's one of the endings. I mean, Yoko Taro games in particular are always just known for having the joke ending.
It's a very, very old, but very like it has stood the test of time. It's an old line from Pat from Best Friends Play, where he says, "I always want the option in a non-linear game for you to just shoot yourself right away."
All right. I guess Everest, you're gonna close it off then.
Sure, sounds good. So I wasn't prepared to talk about because with nonlinear games, I was thinking more of the games that I already discussed. I wasn't really ready to be talking about games with like branching endings or multiple endings, and I played a lot of those, and they're always pretty cool. Like the 999 or the Zero Escape series comes to mind, but I wasn't actually ready to talk about this, and so originally I was going to talk about Stanley Parable. But Gabe brought that up, and I think we had a pretty great discussion about it, and I do dearly love that game. It's probably one of my favorite games. But one actually that I realized that I'd really like to talk about is actually one that I played pretty recently that I haven't seen a lot of press about at all, really, but I was pretty impressed by it, and that's a game called Paradise Killer.
Mm-hmm.
And in Paradise Killer, the story's a little complex, so I'll try and make it as simple as I can, but basically you're a detective that's put onto this gorgeous vaporwave aesthetic style island, and you have to solve a murder mystery. And you're basically tasked by the embodiment of justice itself to become judge, jury, and executioner. And you need to basically run around the island, talk to all its inhabitants, find clues. And then at any point in the game and at any point during your investigation, you can start the trial. And in the trial, everybody on the island comes into the courtroom, and then you can basically pin the crime on whoever you want, because justice, the embodiment of justice, has complete faith in the protagonist to figure out who did it. And so you can just you can convict whoever you want for the crime, and they will be punished to death, and they will be convicted for the crime. And so I think it's a really interesting kind of way, like a non-linear way to do a detective game, because in a lot of detective games, like there's one solution. It's a detective game, and that's how it works. But with Paradise Killer, like you can do the trial whenever you want, and as long as you have enough information to pin your target, you can pin them for the crime. And I think it's really interesting because the game kind of like the game makes it very clear that you don't need to make the right choice. You can make the wrong choice if you want. And I think there's a really interesting line in the game right before the trial where the embodiment of justice kind of brings you to the side and says, tells the protagonist, make your truth. And find your truth. And I think that's really interesting because like they're not telling you to find the truth. They're telling you to find your truth. They're trying to tell you to find like your personal truth. And so, and the game kind of purposely has like characters that you're not going to like and characters that you are going to like. And they're all involved within this murder mystery. And it's basically up to you to decide who you think deserves to be punished for the crime and who you think should go free. And the ending is completely different depending on which characters you convict for the crime and which characters you don't. And you can choose to go in with as much evidence as you want or as little evidence as you want. And I just think it's really, really interesting. And I've only done one ending so far, but because I just finished it like last week. But I do want to go back and kind of test out different endings and see how different the game is depending on who you convict for the crime. And yeah, it's just really cool because like I could see this sort of game like everybody who plays it will kind of get a different story from it, because like for instance, my interpretation of the game was completely different from a friend of mine's interpretation of the game. Or my brother's friend, he convinced to play the game, and he was telling me that it's like, oh yeah, no, my friend didn't like the game because he didn't like how he had to convict a character that he liked. And I was like, oh well, that's weird, because you don't have to convict the characters that you like. You can just let them go free if you like them. But he said, he's like, oh, but I don't know, that person, like, he's very like justice oriented. So he probably did convict the person that he likes just because he, stands that like he thought that character should be punished. And so I just think it's really interesting that like really depending on like how you are as a person, it kind of ties back to Papers, Please, how it's like it really kind of shows who you are as a person to like decide like who you think should be convicted for the murder.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, it's just really interesting. I thought it was really cool.
Nice. I like the style of this Everest. Do you know the series JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
Stop. Oh, it's like Danganronpa.
I can't even fault. God. Like, it's not even a JoJo thing at this point. It's just a list of like very stylish characters doing like magazine poses.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of become a thing completely separate from JoJo at this point.
Well, I think that's like every visual novel at this point.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just become like a standard Japanese video game character display. I really like that. Two small things with it. One, the thing that it's kind of an expansion of a Danganronpa day, because in Danganronpa you'll have it where like you can start the trial at any point, right?
No, Danganronpa, they won't let you start the trial until you collect all the evidence.
Every evidence, and you've viewed every like event.
Okay. I like the extra freedom on top of that then, as well as the thing where the entire game rides on you finding this person. And then the second thing is the amount of power you have with it, because of course, like Danganronpa, Phoenix Wright, any other courtroom game, you need to find out the absolute truth. But in this, it has a very vigilante style nature to it, showing that you can convict the wrong person for the wrong crime without like adequate due process.
Yeah,
right.
And it goes even further than that, because even after the trial, the embodiment of justice just gives you your gun, and they're like, yeah, you're free to go now, but if you want, you can go convict like someone that wasn't convicted during the trial. If you feel like it, you can just shoot them. And so I personally didn't, because I was happy with who got convicted. But it's just like all those like additional touches that really like kind of personalizes the story for everybody, and just kind of lets them, decide who they want to convict for the crime, because the game's set up in a way where like almost everybody is involved, and it's just kind of up to you to decide who you really think is deserving of punishment.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, I'm finding this Shinji guy I'm looking at. He looks suspicious. For the people at home,
imposter is sus.
For the people at home, Shinji's this like 4-armed kind of goat-looking demon, but not like a Baphomet. He's kind of just like a skinny blue naked guy, and he's got 2 of his arms doing a peace sign, kind of like a hype beast, and then the other 2 are flipping deuces up to the air.
What a Chad.
It's really good pose.
Great.
Is the person who's guilty the same every time?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that like the game, like there's not one concrete person that's guilty.
Ooh.
It's kind of like, again, like almost everybody is involved, like, because I don't want to spoil the mystery too much, but like almost everybody is involved in a certain way. And so again, it's just kind of, I think it's just designed in that way to kind of make the player decide like who they want to fall for the crime, because there are people obviously that have more influence over the crime than others, but like almost everybody is involved in at least a small way.
Are you able to try multiple people at the same time and give out like relative punishment, or is it just you shoot the person who's guilty?
You shoot the person or people who are guilty.
Ooh. That's I like that. That's all or nothing. That's great.
Man, maybe me not liking the art style has really set me back about playing this.
I mean, well, if we know anything about Everest's recommendations, maybe he's onto something with this one.
Look, all I'm saying is I have some good recommendations.
You have good recommendations too, yeah.
No. I'm told Everest many times, you should play this game called Danganronpa. It's really good. Yeah, I'll get to it.
Hey, but I did play it. I love Danganronpa now.
Yeah. It took you like what 3 years after that recommendation? It took you how long after me recommending Persona?
Oh God.
He's on Dark Souls. He's a little behind. He's getting there.
But yeah, so I think that game's pretty cool in terms of
Nice.
non-linearity.
Yeah. Well, thanks guys for sharing that. And I guess as a really, final thoughts on this. I had already said it before, but when deciding on storytelling, like it's one thing to have like your compelling protagonists in Aloy, Peter Parker, Nathan Drake, and Kratos, and in just PlayStation, right? But like it's one thing to have someone to root for, but when suddenly non-linear storytelling kind of thrusts you into the fold, like that just changes the experience completely, I think. And I would really encourage a lot more games like that in the future, because I love single player games as much as the next person, but single player games that don't follow a traditional narrative are also pretty fucking sweet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I guess with that being said, let's close out for the night. So thanks everybody for tuning in. You can find all of our social media down in the description below, both individually and as the InkGuild. You can also find the social media for the Soibois down below, as well as them individually. Michael, I'll be including your art account there. Do you have a personal account that you want me to also plug in there too, or just the art account?
No, I don't do too much aside from the art thing. So you
Okay.
can find me on the Facebook with Michael Nason if you'd like to know what I look like. But the big thing for all my stuff is at Michael Donalds.
Michael probably has a hidden Twitter for being horny.
I got my secret.
Like you have, like how you have a public Twitter for being horny, Morgan.
Hell yeah, man.
All right. So yeah, please do give Michael a follow, and if you can commission him, it's very much worth it. I can attest.
Yo, I can attest.
Yeah, we both
Thank
can.
you guys.
Yeah. So for a closing or to thing as kind of like a final send off, because we had a lot of games to talk about, there are probably some that we might have missed, or maybe we just didn't have the time to talk about. So between the three categories, what is a single honorable mention between any of them that you have, right? So if you have one quickly that you wanted to talk about in regards to world building or whatever, you can say that now. And for me, my honorable mention is world building, or it relates to world building, and that is Minecraft's world. For what is essentially just I think I spoke about this with Gabe before the podcast even aired, or before the podcast recording, but basically Minecraft, for such a simple game, has so much lore to it that when you start exploring the Nether, or when you start exploring the end, and even beyond the end, really, like when you start now going into what's like beyond the Ender Dragon, there's so much content to keep you invested into that game for years to come, and that's what makes it thing. I think that's what makes it like a good go-to, right? With every update, there's going to be a new thing that that developers put into Minecraft that's like, oh, lore shit, that's sweet. But yeah, Gabe, how about you? You got any, or do you have an honorable mention, and in which category?
I don't know which category I would shuffle this into yet, because I have not played it, and nor has anyone. The game I was sort of like debating on talking about this game because it hasn't come out yet, but it's this upcoming game called Stray. It's my most anticipated game that is coming out this year. Basically, the idea of the game is like it's sort of like really tapping into that like non-linearity soft spot in my fucking brain, which really giving me a serotonin rush. Basically, the whole idea of the game is that you play as a fucking cat in this in like a cyberpunk world, which is populated by robots, and the game is a mystery game where you have to sort of like solve. I don't know what the mystery is. I'm not really sure what it is, but like you basically have to solve the mystery and like explore this world. But because these are all robots who speak robot and you're a fucking cat, there's no dialogue, there's no notes, there's no like written information anywhere to like clue you in to where to go next or what to do. You basically just have to figure this shit all out for yourself. That's what the game sounds like, at least. And like that's the fucking sweet spot for me.
All right, Morgan.
Okay, I guess this would fit into the like last category. I'm not entirely sure. It's more in the case that like this is non-linear in the sense that it's a visual novel that lets you take the routes in or like these scenes in like any order you want and lets you construct the story one by one by yourself. It's a visual novel called 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim. It is a game by VanillaSoft. I guess most famous for Dragon Crown. It's legit one of the best pieces of like science fiction in terms of like video games that I've like experienced in a good like 5 years. Like real shit. I just didn't want to talk about it because it's like a 30-40 hour long visual novel. I don't know how to talk about that.
All right. Well, I don't know. Maybe on your own. Maybe with your own podcast, you've got time.
Yeah, check out the Soibois podcast coming 2025 or whenever we decide to do it.
Coming never.
Oh my
Literally.
god. All right.
It's already out. There's an episode.
That's episode 0.
Oh my
Shit,
goodness.
never mind.
If you guys need any help, I have been doing this for quite a while.
Hell yeah.
Oh, for sure. I'll make sure to hit you up.
Yeah. Anyway, Gabe, you were saying something?
Oh, I was just saying I just bought 13 Sentinels like a couple days ago.
Yeah, I gotta play that.
Yeah, Gabe literally has my tastes.
All right, Michael.
I don't have any like other games to talk about that would really give that idea across. I'd probably just continue on all the prior points. Is a bit of like a smaller game, but I think I will talk about Dark Souls. And
Very
Dark Souls I think is very good for like the stuff that I prefer as well as the stuff that just makes a great nonlinear experience. So every single character and every single theme is different, but all relates to the singular point. I think Everest is going to see the point at its strongest in Dark Souls 3. And I can't really say for Dark Souls 2 out of spite, but spite because I told Chris I'd played at some point, but maybe. And Dark Souls 1 does do it quite well, but I think 3 does it the best, where Dark Souls is all about death, and it's all about how people and groups react to death. A lot of it, you could say, is around coping with death. There's a lot of metaphors that have been made about the game being about cancer, about being about Alzheimer's, about being about loss, about being about the past. And every single character in the game understands that the world is coming to an end, and they all show different ways of handling it. Many of them are forms of denial, and ways to continue it. Like the big one Everest talked about is Anne Orlando, and I will give somewhat of a spoiler for it, if that's all right. Just on the area itself, through doing something, you find out that this like big, bold, beautiful, like shiny golden church castle you've been in the whole time, because it just looks like an absolute majestic scene. When you do a certain event at the end of the level, you will end up walking backwards through all of Anne Orlando, and you find out the whole time it's been smoke and mirrors. Like, it's completely abandoned, but the whole thing looks beautiful. It looks like Disneyland. It's so bright and happy and gold. But then when you shut that off, the whole thing turns cold and blue, and you can tell that there's never been anyone here in the first place. When you came in here, it was just as dead as it was before, but there were things set up for people to feel like there was still life to be had. And then for like Dark Souls 3, I'm not going to spoil like plot points with it, but you can see right away when you start the game that reality itself is starting to close up shop, and it shows how like these large god beings learn to cope with ending. And so Dark Souls series is all about ending and death, and every single character then echoes that point too. The thing that I find with my nonlinear experiences is I want them to have a point, and then everything around it can have a lot of variety, but it all echoes a point.
Right. All right. Everest,
Yeah.
you're closing off the honorable mentions.
I mean, I think I kind of like pretty much talked about everything that I wanted to talk about. I guess one thing that I would maybe do as like an honorable mention in terms of like character building and like the non-linearity of like characters is the Pokemon franchise. I think I was thinking about that, and like while they are all linear games, I think the world itself and the characters are such like, again, tying back to that sort of idea that's just like a fan fiction creator's paradise, is that like there's just so many characters within the world of Pokemon, and so many ways that they interact with each other, and so many like backstories and everything. That's like, the Game Freak has really made like such a rich universe for all of these characters to live in. And I mean, there's a reason why there's a 20-year long running Pokemon anime, and 100 movies and stuff like that. And like I think really like most recently there's been that release of like the Pokemon Masters game, which is just one big crossover where all the characters from all these Pokemon games are like crossing over and meeting each other, and there's all these new like scenes with them interacting with each other that I do really think that it's a testament to like how many like the character building that they've done in the Pokemon universe. So I guess that would be my honorable mention.
Cool. Well, I guess with that being said, and since we've all kind of gotten all of that out of the way, I think we're done for tonight. So yeah, thanks for listening in, everybody. Have a good rest of your night.
Bye, everybody.
Or morning.
Stay safe.
Or morning.
Keep
and
safe, have fun.
actually, yeah,
Or
thanks
afternoon.
again to the Soibois for joining us. This has always been I think it's always fun talking about video games with you guys. And if you
Hell
guys do
yeah.
have your own podcast,
Yeah.
then
I could talk about video games forever. Thanks for having it.
yeah. All right.
Yeah, we should have an episode where you just talk about the Stanley Parable.
That'd be fun. All right.